Chapter 21-26. Ning Shu's daily life was very simple. He didn't go out to seek pleasure. If he wasn't in the Ministry of War, he would be in the Crown Princess residence. He also didn't go out to the taverns. Even if he went out, he would put on a disguise and there wouldn't be anyone following him. Ning Shu walked on the streets, looking at the people coming and going. There were gorgeously dressed women, and there were also romantic and elegant men. This kind of scene was rare in a feudal society where men were superior to women. It wasn't easy for women to go out. Of course, it was targeted at the ladies of noble families. Ordinary peasant women still had to work. However, it was rare for men and women to go out without any worries, just like in a modern society. It looked very prosperous. Ning Shu drank the refreshing wine and looked at the prosperous capital city through the window of the wine shop. She wandered around and saw beggars lying on the streets with broken bowls in front of them. There were both men and women begging for food. Where there was wealth, there was poverty. If Ni Baiwei had transmigrated to an ordinary family, she might not have had the ability to change the entire society. However, she had transmigrated to a princess and later became an empress. She had a lot of influence. One had to be cautious when in a high position. Any casual action of hers could have a huge impact. Perhaps it was because Ni Baiwei was too pitiful before she transmigrated. She was an ordinary woman with ordinary looks, ordinary job, and ordinary abilities. Therefore, she transmigrated and became a princess. It was probably to make it up to her. Ning Shu ate pastries and drank wine. He propped up his chin and looked at the people coming and going. This world was very good. It had restrictions for men. It was very good. It couldn't become a Chengzhu Confucian world where men were superior to women. Ning Shu strolled on the streets when he had nothing to do. Many things happened on the streets every day. It was the place where the government and the people had the most direct contact. Then, Ning Shu realized that some laws weren't perfect. Ning Shu, who had been in many worlds and was a lawyer, realized that the cases here were decided based on feelings and public opinion. If the evidence was conclusive, then it was fine. If there wasn't enough evidence, then the case was a little mysterious. Moreover, the specific laws were very vague. It was like this in the capital city. If it was a place far away from the capital city, then the county magistrate would have the final say. How could this matter be resolved? Ning Shu had originally wanted to take a look at Li State's legal records, but they were in the Ministry of Justice. Ning Shu felt that he should stay away from such places. Ning Shu felt that the Empress's eyes were everywhere, and the Empress was staring at her at all times. Her Majesty would probably have some secret guards or spies hidden in the homes of the princesses and ministers. Things like the law didn't need to be hidden like this. They could be shown to the common people and let them know what they couldn't do and what the consequences of doing so would be. Even Ning Shu, the crown princess, didn't know the specifics of what was hidden in the hall of the Ministry of Justice. There was nothing in his memory, which meant that the client did not care much about the law. Catching criminals was a matter of great torture. If they couldn't take it anymore, they would naturally confess. This could easily lead to an unjust case. Ning Shu wanted to revise the law, but she was now the crown princess. Any policies could wait until she became the empress. Anything she did now would be overstepping her boundaries and easily arousing the empress' suspicion. Ning Shu returned to the crown princess's residence and saw Fenjiuxuan standing at the door waiting for her. He looked like he had turned into a wife-gazing rock. Fenjiuxuan seemed to want to mend their relationship. Recently, they had interacted more often. From time to time, he would prepare some delicious food. Although they didn't speak much, their relationship seemed to have improved greatly. Ning Shu asked, "What business do you have with me?" Fenjiuxuan said gently, "Crown Princess, you just came back from outside. Wash up." The maid helped Ning Shu wring a handkerchief. Ning Shu wiped her face and hands. She sat down and asked, "What business do you have with me?" In the past, Fenjiuxuan had always been cold to her, mixed with a sense of disgust. Now that he could be like this, it was already a huge improvement. One who offered something for no reason was hiding evil intentions. Fenjiuxuan asked, "Yushuan wants to ask if there is any news of my mother." Fenjiuxuan's mother was the prime minister. As the prime minister, it was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to send disaster relief. Furthermore, the journey was tiring. Prime Minister Feng was a woman who took great care of herself. After returning from this trip, she would definitely be much more haggard. At the very least, her skin would be much rougher. The Empress couldn't directly vent her anger on this matter, so she vented her anger on Fenjiuxuan's mother. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "There is no specific news. Don't worry, Prime Minister Feng will be fine. If anything happens, the court will definitely have news." Ning Shu's words didn't comfort Fenjiuxuan at all. The disaster victims were extremely vicious. For a mouthful of food, they would do anything. Even though his mother was the prime minister, this identity didn't have any deterrence at all. Fenjiuxuan knew it was because he had implicated his mother. Before his mother went to disaster relief, she wrote a letter to him, telling him to get along well with the crown princess. There was no turning back, so he tried to make things better. Prime Minister Feng had always been working under the Empress, so she knew the Empress' way of doing things. Something must have happened to the crown princess and her son. But there has been no news for so long. The Empress is a bit worried about Prime Minister Feng, Ning Shu added. Fenjiuxuan, my heart is set in stone. Ning Shu saw that Fenjiuxuan wasn't happy, so she was happy. She made you suffer. You couldn't eat, drink, or sleep well. Fenjiuxuan seemed to understand Ning Shu's bad taste. He sorted out the anxiety in his heart and said, "Your Highness, let's eat dinner together. I already ate outside. You can eat by yourself." Although he was a feast for the eyes, Ning Shu didn't want to pretend to be polite to Fenjiuxuan. Did he really think he was a god who had come down from the heavens? Being favored by him should make him cry tears of joy. Even if he was a peerless beauty, he still had intestines and white brains. He was the same as a normal person. Ning Shu felt that it wasn't easy to be so disgusted with himself. But Fenjiuxuan's appearance could really mesmerize people. They couldn't help themselves from his beauty. Fenjiuxuan reached out and grabbed the teacup in Ning Shu's hand and put it on the table. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Fenjiuxuan. Fenjiuxuan leaned his body and supported the chair with his hand. He circled Ning Shu in the chair and looked down at Ning Shu. He said, "Yushuan thought that your Highness pushed Yushuan into the pond because you adored Yushuan. If your Highness is angry about the seventh princess, Yushuan apologizes." Ning Shu reached out and put his finger on Fenjiuxuan's chest and poked hard. "What do you think? You think I adore you? Also, you fell into the pond yourself. I saved you. Don't wrong me." Fenjiuxuan ignored the finger on his chest and leaned closer to Ning Shu. Chapter 21-27. Ning Shu tilted his head to avoid Fenjiuxuan's hot breath. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Get out of the way. You're offending your superior." Fenjiuxuan grabbed Ning Shu's finger and said with a smile, "We're husband and wife. This is the romance of husband and wife. So, what's your purpose in doing this? I remember that you sent a letter to Ni Baiwei not long ago." Ning Shu stretched out his hand and was about to kick Fenjiuxuan between his legs. Fenjiuxuan immediately dodged. Ning Shu snorted. "Do you think I want to marry you? I married an ancestor who disdains me and is dissatisfied with me. If it weren't for Imperial Mother's decree, I wouldn't have married you. I'll deal with you sooner or later." Right now, he was hindered by the fact that he hadn't ascended the throne. If he killed Fenjiuxuan, there would be a lot of trouble. Besides, even if he wanted to kill him, it would be justified. Ning Shu adjusted the hairpin on his head and said to Fenjiaxuan, "It's fine if we live in harmony, but I can feel whether you're doing things sincerely or not. Don't do things that embarrass you and annoy me." Fenjiaxuan frowned. "Crown Princess means that you won't forgive me?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I didn't say that I won't forgive you. There was no such thing as forgiveness. There was only cremation." Fenjiaxuan quickly walked in front of Ning Shu. "Yushuan knows that your highness is dissatisfied, but we're husband and wife. We can only face storms hand in hand. Your highness, please believe me. In the past, I felt that your highness the crown princess was dissatisfied and arrogant. Your highness, please forgive me." Ning Shu blinked. "You want to be in the same boat with me? Do you know the enemy I'm facing? Yushuan knows. You're the heir to the throne, and the biggest obstacle is Her Majesty the Empress. You're feared by Her Majesty and also attracted the attention of other princesses," Fenjiaxuan said. Ning Shu, "Well, according to you, what should I do?" Fenjiaxuan thought for a moment and was shocked. He looked at Ning Shu for a while and finally said bitterly, "His Highness is doing very well now. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind, and the gun will hit the bird that sticks out." He had always thought that the crown princess was a good-for-nothing. None of the other princesses were more outstanding than her. There were bad rumors about her occupying the position of crown princess, but she did not do anything about it. Fenjiaxuan refused to marry such a person in his heart. The crown princess Ni Bingyan exuded a spineless and cowardly aura from head to toe. She was always submissive. Fenjiaxuan didn't have a good impression of the crown princess before. He felt that the crown princess was incomparably mediocre. If such a person became the ruler of the Li state, the common people would suffer. With such a character, she must be controlled by the court officials. There was nothing outstanding about her. No benevolence, no achievements, nothing. She had nothing to show, except for the identity of crown princess. After the marriage, Fenjiaxuan didn't have a good impression of the crown princess. He kept in touch with the seventh princess through letters. On the one hand, the seventh princess was really interesting and different from the other coquettish bitches. On the other hand, he felt indignant and uncomfortable. He didn't care about the crown princess at all. Now it seemed that she was in the best state. Ning Shu was too lazy to pay attention to Fenjiaxuan. When she ascended the throne, Fenjiaxuan would be dealt with. "I grounded you, not let you run around. Ground you well. Otherwise, the Empress will scold me again." Ning Shu turned and left. Fenjiaxuan tilted his head. His jade-like fingers stroked his lips. He narrowed his eyes and thought. Ning Shu returned to the study and walked to the hanging birdcage. There was a bird jumping up and down inside. When it saw Ning Shu, it flapped its wings and chirped. Ning Shu took some bird food and fed it to the bird. Then he opened the cage. The bird flew into Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu put some spiritual energy into its body. Now the bird was his. He had tamed the bird. Ning Shu hoped that these birds would be smart. Ning Shu cut a small piece of paper. Then he dipped the brush in ink and wrote on the paper. The handwriting was imitating Fenjiaxuan's. Fenjiaxuan didn't write to Ni Baiwei anymore. Ni Baiwei must be very worried. Ning Shu wrote some sentimental words in the letter. When it was dark, Ning Shu tied the paper to the bird's leg. He stroked the bird's head and said with his consciousness, "If you don't like me, I'll run away first." He didn't know if the bird could understand him with its intelligence. Even parrots could speak. He hoped that this bird had the intelligence of a parrot. However, its body was so small and its head was so small. Its brain capacity probably wasn't big. Its intelligence, if this bird was unfortunately caught, it had nothing to do with her even if the paper was in the hands of the Empress. This was written by Fenjiuxuan to Ni Baiwei. He couldn't help but write a love letter to express his love. Her head was really green. Ning Shu, shut up. We're very good. We love each other very much. Of course, she chose to forgive him. Ning Shu opened the window. First, he used his spiritual energy to scan the surroundings. Then he released the bird. The bird flapped its wings and flew away. Ning Shu washed his hands. Then he sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. When the bird flew back, it was already late at night. The bird landed directly on Ning Shu's head. Ning Shu caught the bird and saw a note on its leg. It should be Ni Baiwei's reply. Sometimes, he felt that Ni Baiwei was really stupid. She dared to reply under such circumstances. After all, she had just been scolded by the Empress for ignoring human relations. Maybe Ni Baiwei wasn't from ancient times and didn't understand the seriousness of this matter. Ning Shu opened the note and read the content. The content was that Ni Baiwei anxiously asked if Fenjiuxuan was okay. She asked if the crown princess had made things difficult for him. She said that it was all her fault. But it was sincere and sincere. Ning Shu put away the note sent by Ni Baiwei. Then he locked the bird in the birdcage. Then he sat cross-legged and cultivated. He didn't plan to reply to the letter. Now, Ni Baiwei must be anxiously waiting for a reply. She probably couldn't even sleep well. However, Ning Shu didn't plan to reply. Maybe he would reply in a few days when he was in a good mood. Just wait. He was so haggard because of her. Ning Shu's daily job was to act weak in front of the Empress. He didn't hope to arouse the Empress's maternal instincts. As long as he didn't do anything wrong, it was fine. If someone impeached him, Ning Shu only needed to kneel and tell his son that he was wrong. Sometimes, Ning Shu felt that these imperial censors had nothing better to do. She had not done anything that would cost her life, nor did she do anything that would harm the country's foundation. All they did was talk about trivial matters endlessly, and they were talking about trivial matters. In order to avoid being caught, Ning Shu didn't interact with the ministers. Ning Shu wouldn't do things like forming cliques for personal gain. The imperial censors could only use trivial things. Those who didn't know the inside story would say that the crown princess was too bad and was impeached by the imperial censors every day. Chapter 21-28. Her Majesty's desk was filled with memorials to impeach the crown princess. Anyway, there was a lot of support for the crown princess to be deposed, as if the crown princess would be deposed the next day. It was hard to guess the emperor's thoughts. Maybe he had a rebellious mentality and wanted her, the crown princess, to stay there. Ning Shu didn't make big mistakes, but she did make some small ones. Ning Shu didn't ask for credit. She was probably used to her eldest daughter being like this. Every time, it would be over with a lot of noise and little rain. Just like Aunt Flo, there would be impeachment every once in a while. The crown princess, who had no talent and no virtue, was the end of the Li state. Ning Shu heard it all in one ear and only needed to kneel on the ground. Master Li comforted Ning Shu. Those censors can't find anything to do if they don't impeach you. Of course, there are people who add fuel to the fire. One can only rise above others after suffering the most. Impeachment was the censors' performance. Especially when they had to directly face their superiors, they had to be proactive. Ning Shu said, "I don't care at all." She guessed that the censors used it to improve their performance. If it was too peaceful, the censors would definitely do something. Ning Shu felt that the more they did this, the more the Empress would protect her. Who asked her to be so cowardly? Although she hated iron for not becoming steel, she was still the Empress's child. Master Li saw Ning Shu like this and didn't comfort her. "Your Highness can also be outstanding, but not now." "Understood," Ning Shu said. Master Li told Ning Shu to either admit her mistake or cry out that she was innocent. She shouldn't go against the Empress. It would be better if she cried more pitifully and created more trouble. Tears shouldn't be shed easily. The Empress didn't want to see her daughter cry at such an old age. She wasn't a child anymore. If she wanted to cry, it should be when they were alone. When Master Li saw that Ning Shu knew what to do, he went back to his courtyard to plant and water the flowers. Moreover, ever since Fenjiuxuan married into the crown princess's residence, the two of them had not met. Master Li did not want to have any contact with Fenjiuxuan. Aside from cultivating, Ning Shu would occasionally send Ni Baiwei a letter via messenger pigeon. Then, she would ignore Ni Baiwei and would only reply after 2 days. This made Ni Baiwei extremely anxious. She had to pay attention to whether the bird was flying over at any time. His heart was filled with all sorts of apprehension and anxiety. Ning Shu began to compile some laws. As for the more vague legal boundaries, Ning Shu tried to be more detailed. He had borrowed a law code from the Empress. If he directly contacted the officials of the Ministry of Justice, the Empress might think too much. The Empress asked Ning Shu why he was reading these books, and Ning Shu honestly told her that he didn't go out every day. If he had nothing to do, he could only read books. The Empress was speechless. This daughter of hers was a bit of a shut-in. She was afraid that she would be framed if she went out. This timid personality, however, was understandable. Although she was the crown princess, she did not have martial arts. If something happened to her, she would not even know how she died. Speaking of which, this daughter still had some merit, and that was that she knew her own limits. The Empress had people move stacks of law codes and books to the crown princess's residence. Then, Ning Shu did not go out even more. Ning Shu flipped through the various codes of law and wrote down some of the vague areas. He prepared to compile a new law code. Of course, he would only make some changes on the basis of the original law code. These things could only be done openly when he became the Empress. Ning Shu felt that his days were still quite full. When he had nothing to do, he would play with the birds, then write letters to Ni Baiwei, and then read the law codes. If he was not in the Ministry of War, he would be cultivating. In the eyes of others, she was a tortoise hiding in its shell. All of his patience and efforts were for the moment when he would rule the world. On the other hand, Fenjiuxuan would often have a servant send some nourishing soup and medicine. When something was good, he would send it here. However, he was never able to enter the study. He was always stopped by Ning Shu's personal maidservant. After the servant left, the maidservant would bring the food box to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was not interested in these nourishing things. He let the maidservant eat all of them so that she could properly nourish her body. In the future, if you want to send something here, you can eat it after checking that there is no problem. There is no need to send it to me, Ning Shu said to the maidservant without even raising his head. The maidservant acknowledged. No matter what Fenjiuxuan wanted to do, whether he wanted to numb her or bet on her, Ning Shu did not want to care. They were on opposing sides, so there was nothing to say. The imperial court began to prepare for the hunt. The annual hunt was very grand. The sons and daughters of the nobles and the princes and princesses competed in various ways. Usually, this period of the hunt was the most difficult for the client. When others shot the prey, she would watch. When others carried the prey back, she would still watch. It was too awkward. However, the hunt would last for more than 10 days and a half, close to half a month. Not only would the client be embarrassed for half a month, but after the hunt, the awkwardness would last for a long time. It would not be so awkward until the hunt's popularity died down. The client would try to cultivate a diamond heart to block out the awkwardness around them. During the morning court, Ning Shu heard that the hunt was going to be held. Almost everyone, including the Empress, cast their eyes on Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. This was very awkward. Ning Shu returned to the Crown Princess residence and went to Fenjiaxuan's courtyard. He said to Fenjiaxuan, "Pack up. We are going to participate in the hunt." The hunt was something that almost everyone in the imperial court participated in. It felt like an alternative dating show. Both men and women had a chance to shoot a giant eagle with a bow, show off in various ways, and show off in various ways. It attracted a lot of screams. Ning Shu wanted to say that he did not want to go, but as the crown princess, it was impossible for him not to go. Fenjiaxuan understood Ning Shu's awkwardness better. He said, "Your Highness, Yushuan will protect you." "Thank you," Ning Shu said casually. Fenjiaxuan began to pack up. Ning Shu also went back to his room to pack. After all, they were going to live in the deep mountains and forests for a period of time, so they had to consider all aspects. In a country where everyone worshipped martial arts, hunting was very important. Sometimes, they had to have fun with the people, let some animals out, and then kill these fierce animals. Moreover, there were many wild animals in the deep mountains and forests. They might be killed by wolves, bears, and the like. It was a serious game. Every year, there were people who died in the hunt. It did not matter if they were killed by humans or animals. If they died, they died. Only by maintaining this viciousness and fierceness would they be able to protect their country. Just like wolves. However, public security was a problem. If there was martial arts, it was very likely that they would draw their swords and start a gang fight. This time, Ni Baiwei should also go. Although she was young, it was time for her to go to the hunting ground. It could be considered as an early adaptation. It was very good. He wondered how the meeting between Ni Baiwei and Fenjiaxuan went. Ning Shu put some medicine bottles in his luggage. There were some antidotes, some poisons, and some mosquito repellents in these bottles. It was all for the sake of preventing any accidents. Chapter 21-29. There were too many accidents on the hunting grounds, and blood was spilled everywhere. Every time the client went hunting, they had to be fully armed, and they just had to sit on the back of a horse and wander around the campsite. If they couldn't catch a single prey, they might be able to shoot a bird with a slingshot in half a month if they were lucky. Of course, it was better not to have such prey. They would be laughed at, so it was better to return empty-handed. It was better to get used to being laughed at. Ning Shu let the bird out of the cage, so that it would be discovered if it stayed in the room. Up until now, Fenjiaxuan still didn't know it was her doing. If Fenjiaxuan knew, it would mean that Prime Minister Feng knew, and if Prime Minister Feng knew, it would mean that the Empress knew. What was the use of her previous ruse? Ning Shu had to deal with it properly. Ning Shu went out the door and saw that Fenjiaxuan was already waiting for him by the carriage. He was dressed in green and looked like an immortal. Ning Shu stepped on the stool and got into the carriage. Fenjiaxuan also got in. The two sat face to face, and the carriage was bumpy. Ning Shu simply closed his eyes and began to cultivate, ignoring Fenjiaxuan sitting across from him. Fenjiaxuan saw that Ning Shu was ignoring him and didn't want to talk. The two were silent like this. In the end, it was Fenjiaxuan who spoke. "Your Highness." Ning Shu opened his eyes and looked at Fenjiaxuan. Fenjiaxuan said to Ning Shu, "Your Highness, the hunting grounds are very dangerous. Your Highness must be careful. I will protect your Highness." Feng Yushuan's words were sincere and there was not the slightest bit of falsehood. No matter what, he and the Crown Princess residence were already in a mess and there was no way for him to extricate himself. Even if the Crown Princess died, his life wouldn't be better than now. If the Crown Princess died, he would never be able to reach the center of power. He really didn't want anything to happen to the Crown Princess. Ning Shu accepted Fenjiaxuan's kindness. "I understand." Fenjiuxian smiled faintly and decided to improve his relationship with the crown princess first. Even if he really didn't like the crown princess, the current conflict between the two of them was very unfavorable for him. Wasn't it also a warning from Her Majesty the Empress that his mother was going to provide disaster relief? The crown princess was the daughter of the Empress. He had to remember this. Fenjiuxian reached out and held Ning Shu's hand. Bing Yan, let's move forward hand in hand. Ning Shu smiled, I don't care what you think, as long as you don't cause trouble for me. Of course not, Fenjiuxian said. Ning Shu pulled his hand away and closed his eyes, making it clear that he didn't want to chat. Fenjiuxian tactfully didn't say anything. He pulled aside the curtain and looked at the scenery outside. Just as Ning Shu's butt was about to hurt, they finally arrived at the hunting camp. There were many guards stationed at the camp, and some were busy setting up tents. The area where the tents were set up was empty and on a high slope, surrounded by dense forest. If one wanted to do something, it would be too easy. Assassinations would definitely be convenient. Ning Shu found his own tent, which was closest to the Empress. The Empress' tent was the largest and most luxurious. Ning Shu and Fenjiuxian shared a tent. Since they were husband and wife, they would definitely sleep together. Fenjiuxian put down his bag and saw that there was only one bed in the tent. He said, if your highness doesn't want to sleep on the same bed as Yuxuan can ask someone to put up another bed. There's no need to make a big fuss. If I sleep on the same bed, I'll sleep on the same bed. If they slept on separate beds, wouldn't that be telling everyone that the crown princess and her husband were not harmonious? That's good. Yuxuan definitely won't plot against your highness. I won't touch you. Fenjiuxian had a peerlessly beautiful face as he said some ambiguous words. Just as Fenjiuxian's voice fell, Ni Baiwei's voice came from outside the tent. Elder sister, are you inside? Ning Shu curled the corner of his mouth and tidied up his things. The maids and servants in the hunting ground couldn't follow him. He had to do everything himself, except for Her Highness the Empress. Of course, the palace would also send some palace maids to take care of the basic necessities. Fenjiuxian's expression was somewhat frozen. In this situation, it wasn't good for him to go out, but it wasn't good for him to stay either. Ni Baiwei didn't hear anything from inside, so she asked again, eldest imperial sister, are you inside? When Ni Baiwei arrived at the camp, the first thing she did was to see Fenjiuxian. She wanted to see if Fenjiuxian was okay. I'm inside. Come in, Ning Shu said. Ni Baiwei lifted the curtain and looked at Fenjiuxian first. Fenjiuxian discreetly shook his head at Ni Baiwei. In this situation, she had to be careful with what she said. Ni Baiwei looked away and sat on the bedside to Ning Shu. She said, Elder sister, Mother Empress asked me to come and learn from you how to protect myself in the hunting ground. Ning Shu, did Her Highness really say that? Was Ni Baiwei making up an excuse, or did Her Highness really say that? Was Her Highness purposely mocking her? If Her Highness didn't say that, Ni Baiwei's excuse was terrible. Everyone knew that she didn't get anything in the hunting ground. Every time she couldn't catch a single prey, she would wander around the camp and basically never leave. Fenyu Xian's expression was a bit strange. As the younger sister of the crown princess, had she really not heard of her sister's battle record? It's very simple to protect yourself, and that is to not go hunting, Ning Shu said directly. Ni Baiwei had never participated in such a brutal activity. When she was studying, there were picnics, sports, and work gatherings. She had never heard of such a bloody and brutal activity. It was a bit scary, but the problem was that both men and women had to participate. It was simply too chaotic. Real swords, real spears, and arrows were shot randomly. What if she was injured? Ni Baiwei really wanted to make Her Highness happy. After all, she was the highest leader of a country. Last time, the Imperial Jade Seal incident involved her and Fenjiuxuan. This incident offended the Crown Princess and made Her Highness angry. If she wasn't worried about Fenjiuxuan's situation and wanted to see Fen Yuxian, she wouldn't have the courage to appear outside the Crown Princess's tent. Now that she had found such an excuse, there was no way to continue the conversation. Fen Yuxian felt that Ni Baiwei shouldn't have appeared here. He had worked hard to improve his relationship with the Crown Princess. Now that Ni Baiwei had appeared, everything he had done was ruined. Fenjiuxuan naturally understood in his heart that Ni Baiwei had come to see him. However, their relationship hadn't reached the level of adultery, right? Fenjiuxuan felt quite helpless. A girl like Ni Baiwei could only be doted on. He didn't expect her to have much awareness. Sometimes, she would even be more of a hindrance. Taking such a risk to see him, Fenjiuxuan felt a bit numb in his heart. In short, it was very complicated. Ning Shu didn't expect Ni Baiwei to appear in front of him as if nothing had happened. The excuse she found was also so heart-wrenching. This was the power of love. Chapter 2130. Ning Shu really had to hand it to Ni Baiwei. What was she trying to do? Yet, the excuse he came up with was so annoying. Ning Shu said expressionlessly, "Don't you know that I don't know martial arts and haven't been able to hunt every year? The way I protect myself is by not hunting. Listen carefully." Ni Baiwei was speechless. This was awkward. Ni Baiwei hurriedly explained, "Eldest Imperial Sister, I really didn't do it on purpose." "Please believe me." "What do you mean you didn't do it on purpose?" Ning Shu asked. "I'm not talking about this." "I don't know," Ni Baiwei said. She had only heard from the palace servants how cowardly the Crown Princess was, but she didn't expect her to be so useless on the hunting field. She just had to step on the Crown Princess's sore spot. Ni Baiwei was a little annoyed. She always felt that she had the ability to make others angry. Her previous female boss always said that she was muddle-headed and scolded her. Now, the Crown Princess hated her. "You're my younger sister. How could you not know my situation? A long time ago, Little Seven told me that she would protect me. Now you've changed your words. Why do you keep repeating it? Are you Little Seven?" "Little Seven is cute and obedient. She doesn't do anything out of line like you." Ning Shu looked at Ni Baiwei suspiciously. Ni Baiwei's heart was beating like thunder. Of course, she wasn't the original Ni Baiwei. However, if someone found out, Ni Baiwei's heart would be filled with fear. "Eldest Imperial Sister, I'm Little Seven. Don't you recognize me?" Ni Baiwei said unnaturally. "Is that so?" Ning Shu didn't dwell on this matter. He asked Fenjiuxuan to pour him a cup of tea. He was a little thirsty. Fenjiuxuan reached out his hand to feel the temperature of the teapot on the table. It was warm water. Then, he poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu. He first tested the temperature of the water before pouring the tea. It looked very heartwarming. Fenjiuxuan poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu first. After a short hesitation, he poured another cup for Ni Baiwei. Ni Baiwei instantly revealed a smile, "Thank you, brother-in-law." Feng Yuxuan nodded and said, "Your Highness the Seventh Princess, the Crown Princess is a little tired after coming to the camp and wants to rest." "I understand." Ni Baiwei reluctantly put down the teacup and left the tent. Ning Shu didn't express any opinion about this. Fenjiuxuan explained, "Bing Yan, I promise there won't be a next time." Ning Shu asked, "You want to break Little Seven's legs?" Fenjiuxuan. "There's no such thing. Ning Shu, her legs are on her body. Do you think you can control where she goes? Your promise is very weak, you know. Don't use these lip service promises to brush people off. I don't need your promise." Fenjiuxuan, that the crown princess wasn't just a good-for-nothing. She was also cold-hearted and crazy. He promised that he wouldn't have any entanglements with Ni Baiwei. However, the other party's nonchalant attitude made Fen Jiuxuan feel even more powerless. He felt that the other party didn't understand what he was saying. Perhaps she understood and didn't care. This feeling was very torturous. The tent was silent. Ning Shu drank tea while Fen Jiuxuan sat motionless. They didn't say anything to each other. They were unfamiliar and guarded against each other. Fen Jiuxuan sighed in his heart. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. A drumbeat resounded through the dense forest, startling the birds in the forest. Ning Shu came out of the tent with the peerlessly beautiful Fen Jiuxuan beside him. Many people's eyes focused on Fen Jiuxuan. Ever since the son of the Prime Minister married the Crown Princess, he had faded out of the capital's social circle. Today, when he suddenly saw Fen Jiuxuan, his eyes were still filled with amazement. The Empress stood on the high platform and looked down at the dense mass of people kneeling below. After a rough calculation, there were more than 500 people. Her Majesty the Empress shouted, "Rise!" Immediately, the sound of gongs and drums filled the sky. Roars and shouts rang out, making people's blood boil. They wanted nothing more than to rush out and beat white tigers and blind bears. Ning Shu's expression was very calm. He wasn't affected by the hot-blooded atmosphere at all. To be more precise, he was a little bitter. Similarly bitter was Ni Baiwei. Amidst the waves of shouts and looking at these excited people, Ni Baiwei's face was pale. This wasn't an 800-meter run in school. This was an activity that could take one's life. Ni Baiwei didn't know martial arts, but the people who entrusted her with this task had some foundation in martial arts. They all knew that practicing martial arts was a very difficult thing. Sometimes, people had to soak in medicinal soup to avoid internal injuries. After Ni Baiwei transmigrated into this body, she put down her martial arts. Now, she didn't even know how to pull the bow and arrow, let alone shoot the prey accurately. It was very difficult. But the Empress wanted him to participate. What should he do? Ni Baiwei couldn't help but look at Fen Jiuxuan with a pleading look. Fen Jiuxuan was speechless. So, when hunting, he had to bring two people who didn't know martial arts. Fen Jiuxuan frowned. If he remembered correctly, the seventh princess knew martial arts. Maybe she was a little nervous because it was her first time hunting. So, she had to bring two newbies to hunt. Bullshit. Although the crown princess participated in the hunting activities every year, she was almost the same as a newbie. Fen Jiuxuan suddenly felt a little tired. Fen Jiuxuan nodded at Ni Baiwei. Ni Baiwei suddenly felt relieved. At least, with Fen Jiuxuan looking after her, she could feel a little comforted. Ni Baiwei didn't want to die in such a situation. It wasn't easy to transmigrate. She couldn't die like this. It had been a while since she came to this world. Her body in the modern world might have been cremated. If she died, she would become a lonely ghost. She didn't want to. Ning Shu naturally saw the interaction between Fen Jiuxuan and Ni Baiwei. He directly said, "Yuxuan wants to bring little seven to hunt together." Fen Jiuxuan was speechless. "No." Ning Shu said, "It's little seven's first time at the hunting ground. It's inevitable that she's not used to it. She can only rely on you here. Didn't you promise her?" Fen Jiuxuan was speechless. What did he say? He didn't say anything. Fen Jiuxuan sometimes felt that the crown princess was quite scary. He didn't say anything to Ni Baiwei, but the crown princess knew some inside information. Ning Shu felt that he should give himself a Lei Feng award. After all, in the note he wrote to Ni Baiwei, he said that he would take good care of her. He would protect Ni Baiwei with his life and would not let her come to any harm. He didn't know how touched Ni Baiwei would be when she received the letter. "You're welcome." Fenjiuxuan was confused by Ning Shu's gaze. It was really uncomfortable to be stuck in the middle. He was the crown princess's legal husband in name, but with Ni Baiwei, he felt like he was walking on the tip of a knife. He was walking on the edge of a cliff. If he didn't pay attention, his bones would be broken. This was a very dangerous thing. It might even implicate his mother. Fenjiuxuan looked around the hunting ground. He didn't see his mother. Chapter 21:31. His mother had not shown up, and she had not returned from the disaster relief because of him. Fenjiuxuan wanted to explain to Ning Shu, but he did not know where to begin. Should he explain that he did not write to Ni Baiwei? Right now, Feng Yuxuan was in a difficult situation, especially when he was right under the Empress's nose. Fenjiuxuan could only pray that Ni Baiwei would be smart enough not to cause trouble on such an occasion, and that she would be safe until the end of the hunt. Otherwise, he did not know what would happen. He had already sent people to the dry areas in the north to ask for news of his mother. If something happened in the capital, his mother would be too far away to help. By the time she returned, it would be too late. Fenjiuxuan felt that he should not have agreed to give the bird that he had trained for a long time to Ni Baiwei. Then, he wrote to Ni Baiwei, which led to the current situation. His relationship with the crown princess was as cold as ice. Sometimes, he could not bear to face Ni Baiwei. He wanted to give her good things, but he did not want her to suffer. But there seemed to be no reliable people around her, and in the end, the matter of the note was discovered. Ning Shu only grinned coldly to express his dissatisfaction. His sullen face attracted the attention of Her Majesty, who was on the high platform. Among the hot-blooded faces, Ning Shu's expression was too obvious, as if he had been constipated for a month. "Crown Princess," the Queen shouted. Ning Shu immediately came back to his senses. He immediately bowed and said, "I am here." The Queen said, "This time, no matter what, you have to go hunting. Bring back a prey and show people the power of the royal family." Ning Shu suddenly looked at the Queen with a shocked expression. The Queen rubbed her forehead. She could not bear to look at him. Princess 3 said, "Big sister, you should bring back a big prey to make the Queen happy. Even if you bring back a deer, the Queen will be very happy." That's right. Imperial Mother's expectations for Imperial Sister have always been very low. "Imperial Sister, don't be careless." The other Imperial daughters all agreed. Every year, no matter how many prey they hunted, the Queen Mother didn't feel anything. After all, they hunted prey every year. They could only get better and better each time to be praised. Those who scored 90 points would have to score 100 points the next time. Those who never passed would even be praised. For a long time, the Crown Princess had not been able to harvest anything. The Empress hoped that one day, the Crown Princess would be able to break this habit. But she also knew that the Crown Princess could not practice martial arts. Hunting was too difficult. Ning Shu looked at the other princesses encouraging him to hunt. His face was conflicted. In the end, he said, Fenjiuxuan squeezed Ning Shu's palm. "Don't say no in front of so many people. It's like slapping the Empress in the face and making people think that the Empress chose a useless heir." Ning Shu wanted to say, "I'll go." As for whether or not he could catch the prey, who knew? "I'll go." Ning Shu straightened his chest and said. The other princesses looked at each other and teased Ning Shu, telling him not to go home empty-handed. He could hunt something to make the Queen Mother happy. Or he could hunt some fox fur to make a scarf for the Queen Mother. Ning Shu was not moved by these provocations. He would not act brave for a moment. When he sat on the throne, he could do whatever he wanted. Next was free hunting time. When he came back at night, he could pick his own prey. Dinner would be the prey he hunted. Ning Shu thought he might be hungry. If he had to eat his own prey, he could only eat dry food. The guards brought 2 horses over. Ning Shu picked one and mounted it. Fenjiuxuan reached out to prevent Ning Shu from falling off. Seeing Ning Shu get on the back of the horse, Fenjiuxuan grabbed the reins and beautifully mounted the horse. Ning Shu squeezed the horse's belly and slowly wandered around the camp. He absolutely did not leave the protection of the guards. It was like he was on a field trip. Fenjiuxuan followed beside Ning Shu. Seeing Ning Shu's leisurely appearance, he couldn't help but say, "Your Highness, let me help you hunt." "No need. Even if I did, no one would believe me. Who doesn't know that Fenjiuxuan is a child of the Feng family?" "I don't cheat," Ning Shu said casually. Fenjiuxuan was worried that she didn't have any prey. It was better to say that he was worried about Ni Baiwei. It was very dangerous for Ni Baiwei to hunt alone. Moreover, Ni Baiwei had already returned all of her martial arts. Even if her body had some instincts, when she encountered a critical moment, it was impossible to not have someone to save her. Therefore, Ning Shu wasn't worried at all. Fenjiuxuan also suppressed the anxiety in his heart. Being anxious in this situation was useless. Fenjiuxuan picked up the bow and aimed at a sika deer in the forest. Probably because he had something on his mind, Fenjiuxuan's aim wasn't accurate. He directly shot the tree trunk and scared the sika deer away. Ning Shu smiled and said, "I heard that your archery skills are very good. How come you can't even hit a prey?" Fenjiuxuan smiled bitterly, "Your Highness, don't make fun of me. I haven't hunted for a long time. I haven't touched a bow recently." Ning Shu didn't comment. She didn't believe that Fenjiuxuan was an ambitious person. He wouldn't fall behind in martial arts. Ning Shu also saw that there were wooden figures practicing martial arts in his courtyard. There were also plum blossoms. However, they were all in the backyard and wouldn't attract attention. The reason he couldn't shoot now was because he was worried about Ni Baiwei. The more anxious Fenjiuxuan was, the more leisurely Ning Shu was. She held the bow in her hand but didn't shoot. She was so leisurely that the Imperial Guards couldn't stand it anymore. She was always in the protective circle of the Imperial Guards. They were there to protect Her Majesty the Empress. How could the Crown Princess's face be so thick? She could walk around the campsite in circles like it was natural. When she was hungry, Ning Shu took out some dry food and gnawed on it. Humph, she wouldn't eat those smoky things. They could easily cause cancer. Humph, Ning Shu wasn't worried, but Fenjiuxuan's heart was about to explode. After hunting for half a day, there were already people who were injured. They were carried back to the campsite. There were Imperial physicians who treated the injured people. Fenjiuxuan was afraid of seeing Ni Baiwei, but he was also afraid of not seeing Ni Baiwei. If Ni Baiwei was seriously injured outside, no one would know. At that time, there were too many people. He couldn't tell Ni Baiwei not to go too far. There were too many wild beasts in the forest. Moreover, it was easy to get lost. Fenjiuxuan felt that it was very normal for Ni Baiwei to get lost. It was a very harmonious thing. Ning Shu drank water and ate dry food. She looked at Fenjiuxuan without tasting the food. In her heart, she was rejoicing in his misfortune. "You're going to be anxious to death." In the end, Fenjiuxuan couldn't wait any longer. Because the sky was about to turn dark, Ni Baiwei still hadn't returned. He also didn't hear about her injuries. This meant, she was lost. Perhaps she was eaten by some wild beast. The more Fenjiuxuan thought about it, the more scared he felt. "Your Highness, let Yushuan go hunt some prey for you." Many people were carrying wild boars, roe deer, sika deer, and the like. The Crown Princess wasn't in a hurry. Chapter 2132. Ning Shu shook his head. "No need. If you hunt it, others will say that I cheated. In the past, he couldn't even get a bird's egg. Now, he had to cheat to get it. Fenjiuxuan, he didn't know if he should say this. Fenjiuxuan felt that the crown princess was doing this on purpose. She clearly knew what he was thinking, but why didn't she understand? Moreover, Ni Baiwei was also his sister, a sister from the same mother. How could she be so cruel? Your Highness, how is this cheating? This is the prey that we work together to hunt. What can others say? Your Majesty, wait for me here. I'll be back soon. Fenjiuxuan didn't give Ning Shu a chance to retort. He directly mounted his horse and galloped away. Ning Shu, interesting. He was going to save someone, right? Ning Shu patted his injured rations, drank a mouthful of water, and mounted his horse. Then, he circled around the campsite a few times. He only returned when the sky was dark. Although the Empress had already guessed the result, she couldn't help but facepalm when she saw Ning Shu return empty-handed. The Empress, who was roasting meat beside the fire, couldn't help but laugh. Ning Shu's expression didn't change as he bowed to the Empress. Mother Empress, your son has returned. The Empress, she didn't say anything and waved her hand to dismiss Ning Shu. Ning Shu passed by the fire and saw the leg meat sizzling. He smiled and said to the Empress, if you eat such a greasy dinner, you'll grow very, very fat. Your stomach will grow big, your face will grow fat, your legs will become thick, and you'll become stocky. You won't be able to wear beautiful clothes in the past. Others eat rations while you eat meat. Even if you use poison, I'll make you eat until you have a knot in your heart. What woman didn't like to be beautiful? Ning Shu finished speaking and returned to his tent. The Empress, who had prey, said that Ning Shu couldn't eat grapes and said that the grapes were sour. However, when he ate less. She even mocked Ning Shu's principal husband for eloping with someone else. He still hadn't returned. Where's 7? When the Empress was eating, she suddenly thought of Ni Baiwei. This time, she had asked Ni Baiwei to hunt because she wanted Ni Baiwei to grow up a little and not think about a man who was already married. Moreover, he was her brother-in-law. Now that the sky was dark, Her Majesty was very worried. Ning Shu found Her Majesty the Empress and told her that her principal husband hadn't returned yet, and asked the Empress to send people to look for him. As soon as Ning Shu said this, everyone in the tent stared at Ning Shu. They looked at Ning Shu, who was green all over. The 7th princess did not come back, and neither did Fenjiuxuan. What kind of deal was there? The Empress looked at the frantic Ning Shu, and she really didn't know what to say. He couldn't even keep an eye on his own husband. Ning Shu said he was going out to hunt and barbecue meat for me at night, but he still hasn't returned yet. The Empress held her forehead and glanced at Ning Shu with disappointment. She sent the guards to look for Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan. Who knew what these two people were doing? The Empress patted Ning Shu's head and said, "Don't worry, it's okay. Her Majesty the 7th princess has returned." There was a commotion outside the tent, and the Empress hurried out and saw 2 bloody people. Fenjiuxuan, who was covered in blood, was holding Ni Baiwei. "What's going on?" the Empress asked. These 2 people were entangled again. It was really, she couldn't cut off the ill-fated relationship. "Your Majesty the Empress, quickly find the imperial physician. The 7th princess was surrounded by a pack of wolves and is now seriously injured," Fenjiuxuan said anxiously. The Empress hurriedly let the guards carry Ni Baiwei into the tent, and the imperial physician diagnosed Ni Baiwei. Ni Baiwei's body had a lot of teeth marks on her arms and thighs. She was probably bitten by the wolves. The Empress quietly furrowed her brows. The jungle was obviously very dangerous, yet she still wanted to run around blindly. Was she tired of living? Did she not know her own capabilities? She had only asked her to come here to hunt as a formality. If she really ran off to fight with the wolves, wasn't she tired of living? It seemed like the crown princess knew that she didn't have the ability, and didn't try to show off. Although she was a coward, she still had her life, and knew how to protect herself. Ning Shu asked Fenjiaxuan, "How are you?" "I'm fine," Fenjiaxuan said. However, his sleeve was torn, and the exposed arm was dripping with blood. There was a bloody wound on it. Her Majesty the Empress asked another imperial physician to take a look at Fenjiaxuan. Fenjiaxuan was the son of Prime Minister Feng Jing. If something really happened to him on the hunting field, she was afraid that Feng Jing would resent her. Back in the tent, Ning Shu looked at the imperial physician treating Fenjiaxuan's wound, and asked, "How did you meet little Seven?" Fenjiaxuan hissed and said, "I was tracking a Sika deer, and then I encountered the seventh princess who was surrounded by a pack of wolves, and I saved her." He was afraid that he specifically went to find Ni Bai Wei. It was really a beautiful scene of a hero saving a beauty. Fenjiaxuan said, "Your Highness, trust me." "Of course I trust you. There was no such thing as trust or not." Fenjiaxuan said, "At that time, Yushuan couldn't pretend that I didn't see it. If I let the seventh princess be killed by the pack of wolves, in case someone used this matter to attack your Highness, because of Yushuan's actions, your Highness would bear the burden of sisterhood." Ning Shu hooked up the corner of his mouth, "So, you are still doing it for my good?" "As long as your Highness trusts me," Fenjiaxuan said with a pale face. Ning Shu didn't say anything, and looked at Fenjiaxuan's arm with a big cut. It was probably cut by something sharp. Because Fenjiaxuan was injured, Ning Shu didn't have to go hunting, and stayed in his tent every day. Ning Shu sometimes changed the medicine for Fenjiaxuan, and also added something to Fenjiaxuan's wound to make it difficult for the wound to heal. Fenjiaxuan looked at Ning Shu who was changing the medicine for him, and said gently, "This kind of thing, let the palace servants do it, you don't have to do it yourself." Ning Shu didn't say anything, and tied the bandage. The hunt didn't stop because someone was injured, and every night, they would cheer when they caught their prey. Ni Bai Wei, who was bitten by the wolves, still hadn't woken up. There were bite marks on her arms and legs, but there weren't any on her face. It was probably because her head was too big to bite. Ning Shu went to see Ni Bai Wei. Speaking of which, this body was also full of misfortune. First, she kowtowed, and now, she was bitten by a wolf. If Fenjiaxuan went a little later, she might have been bitten to death by the wolves. It was a pity, but she had the main character aura, and Fenjiaxuan was worried about her. Ni Bai Wei couldn't jump around for the time being, and Ning Shu couldn't be bothered with her. There was no need for him to do anything, and when he ascended the throne, right now, every action was under the eyes of the Empress, and it was unknown if it was because the Empress was too powerful, but this body was full of reverence for the Empress. Ning Shu came back from Ni Bai Wei's tent. Fenjiaxuan wanted to ask how Ni Bai Wei was, but he couldn't ask. If he asked, it would be terrible. Although he had an ambiguous relationship with Ni Bai Wei, he couldn't confirm it. What if Her Highness the Crown Princess got angry? Chapter 2133. Fenjiaxuan held it in and did not ask about Ni Bai Wei's situation. If she really died, there would naturally be a situation, which meant that Ni Bai Wei's life was not in danger. Ning Shu felt that the only advantage of hunting with Fenjiaxuan was that they did not have to wander around every day and not get anything. Hiding in his own tent, he felt very comfortable. There would be all kinds of conflicts during the hunt, such as who stole whose prey, or who shot whose arrow. In short, there were all kinds of sudden situations that made the atmosphere of the hunt very tense, but they still had to hunt every year. Under such circumstances, they could test a person's character and ability to deal with danger. As for those who died, it could only be said that they were unlucky. Could this be the way to choose talents? This method was really unique. Moreover, the Empress's secret guards were densely spread out in this forest. When Ning Shu was wandering around previously, he used his spiritual power to scan the secret guards. Ni Bai Wei finally woke up, but because she was frightened, her spirit was a little flustered. The empress wanted to send her back to the palace, but when Ni Baiwei thought of Fenjiuxuan who came to save her, she shook her head and said that she was not willing to go back. The empress's eyes darkened and said faintly, "If you want to stay here, then stay here." For a man, she was really hopeless. The empress was a little disappointed that little Seven did not live up to her expectations. Why did she not realize that little Seven was so obsessed with men? Ni Baiwei asked the imperial physician about Fenjiuxuan's situation, and the physician said that Fenjiuxuan's situation was very good. He only injured his arm and was scratched by a wolf, but he would be fine after some rest. Ni Baiwei immediately heaved a sigh of relief and asked the imperial physician for an ointment that would not leave any scars. The bite marks all over her body were too terrifying and too ugly. The imperial physician wanted to say something, but hesitated. Some of the bite marks were quite deep, and it was impossible to not leave any scars. Forget it, he did not want to say anything. Halfway through the hunt, Her Majesty the Empress fell ill. She suddenly fell ill and vomited and had diarrhea. Ning Shu thought that she must have eaten something wrong, but the imperial physician took her pulse and said that she was poisoned. She was bitten by a poisonous insect. Her whole body was hot and cold, and the majestic empress was tossed around until she lay down. Now that something had happened to the empress, the hunt naturally could not continue. All the princesses were kneeling in front of the bed. The queen's face was sunken, but her eyes were still sharp. Her eyes were like steel knives that scraped across the kneeling princesses. He had been bitten by a poisonous bug for no reason. It would be strange if the empress did not suspect anything. The imperial physician drained the empress's swollen, pustular wound. The blood that was drained out had a foul stench and was pitch black. Ning Shu whispered to Queen Mother, "How did you get bitten by a poisonous bug?" The maid serving the empress said, "There was a poisonous bug that crawled into the empress's clothes." The empress was bitten when she was wearing her clothes. Ning Shu asked, "What does a poisonous insect look like?" The palace maids' faces were pale. Some of their servants had been tidying up the empress' clothes. Now that something had happened to the empress, their heads might fall to the ground. "It seems to be a scorpion. It ran away in a flash," the palace maid said with a trembling body. There were poisonous bugs in the forest, and it was a tent. It was reasonable for a poisonous bug to crawl in, but how did it get into the empress' tent? "Queen Mother, I have an antidote here. Take one." Ning Shu poured out the antidote, and the empress grabbed Ning Shu's wrist. She looked at Ning Shu fiercely. Ning Shu's face was calm. Whether this was an accident or not, it had nothing to do with her. Ning Shu also suspected that someone had fed the bugs poison. As for who did it, everyone present was a suspect, including the civil and military officials. Of course, the most likely suspects were the princesses. "Big sister, how do you have an antidote? Do you know what kind of poison the empress was poisoned with? Why did you feed her an antidote?" Ning Shu, a princess, asked. Ning Shu said, "I don't know." "You don't know how you happen to have an antidote?" "Big sister, this is too much of a coincidence." The third princess looked at Ning Shu. "Big sister, please explain." "What do I have to explain?" Ning Shu said lightly. "Every year, I bring some antidote. Dr. Zhaoan knows this because every time I go to him for medicine, antidote, and some mosquito repellent." The third princess sneered. "Big sister, this explanation is not enough to convince the public." Ning Shu's face did not change. He said to the empress, "Queen Mother, do you want to take an antidote? The most important thing now is to get better." The third princess grabbed the antidote from Ning Shu's hand. "Who knows if this thing is useful or not? Will it be poisonous and cause secondary damage to the empress's body?" "I am not dead yet," the empress roared. The empress roared. However, after saying this, she vomited. What she vomited was still yellow liquid. Give me the antidote. The third princess immediately handed the antidote to the doctor and sadly said, Queen Mother, let the doctor check if there is any poison. Big Sister has always been eyeing the throne. Last time, she found the imperial seal in her house. Although it was fake, in her own house, she thought of herself as the empress. Feng Yuxuan listened from the side and felt that this matter should be caused by the third princess. Moreover, the matter of the imperial jade seal had not been spread at all. Now that the third princess had said it, it was to tell everyone that the crown princess had always been disloyal. The empress looked a little dazed. She saw people blurry, and she was swaying left and right. After the doctor checked the antidote, he gave it to the empress to take. But after she ate it, the empress vomited it out. She could no longer eat. The empress grabbed Ning Shu's wrist so tightly that it hurt Ning Shu. Was it you? She asked. Ning Shu shook his head. It wasn't me. It really wasn't me. The empress was panting, and sweat was dripping down her temples. She was in a mess. The empress giggled, which made people's hearts tremble. The empress said, I will pass the throne to you. Ning Shu's face did not change. Thank you, Queen Mother. I will protect the Li state and the people of the Li state. I will not disappoint you. The empress only made a vague sound, and a smell came out of her mouth. Ning Shu's face did not change. At this time, the empress was still plotting against him. Next to her was a group of sisters. Without the support of officials, it would not be easy for her to sit on the throne. The empress wanted the sisters to kill each other before she died. Whoever won would be the empress. Perhaps the empress did not want her daughter to die before. There were only a few fights, and there were no big problems. Everything was under her control. But now that someone had done something to her, the empress's motherly love had disappeared. She thought about how to treat the Li state well. No matter who did this, everyone had to take the blame. Chapter 2134. The empress announced that she would pass the throne to Ning Shu. The other princesses looked pale and angry. They shouted to the empress on the bed, Mother, this is not fair. What right does Ni Bingyan have to be the empress? She has no ability at all. Why? The empress was already on the verge of death. Because I said so. The empress gritted her teeth. Whoever I want to pass the throne to, that's who. Mother, you are not fair, not fair. The princesses cried out one by one, pointing at Ning Shu angrily. What right does she have? She has no martial arts, no benevolence, and her reputation among the people is not good. Mother, you must be sick and confused to pass the throne to Big Sister. Mother, you have to think clearly. Are you sure you want to give the Li state to such a person, Mother? The princesses were all disappointed. They all wanted to shake the empress's body to wake her up. The empress spat out yellow bile directly onto the third princess, who was at the front. The third princess did not come back to her senses for a moment. The empress stretched out her hand and tightly grabbed the third princess' hair bun. Third princess. The third princess was scared by the empress's fierce look and did not dare to move. You want the throne? Mother, I will make the Li state better and expand the territory of the Li state, the third princess promised. The third princess promised, and there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Why could that person who had nothing be able to sit on the throne? Why? The empress pulled the third princess' hair. Did you do it? No, it's not. The third princess hurriedly denied it. She almost swore, Mother, if it was me who harmed you, I will die a horrible death. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. Girl, don't swear. You think you are joking, but maybe the heavens take it seriously. Hee. The empress let out a chilling laugh. There was a kind of ruthlessness on her face as if she was on the verge of death, especially the third princess, who was very close to her. She was almost suffocated by the smell that gushed out of the Empress' mouth. The Empress took out the imperial ruler's seal from under her pillow and handed it to Ningxu. The other princesses' eyes were green. They wanted to snatch the imperial ruler's seal, but they didn't dare. Their faces were all twisted. Ningxu bowed and took the imperial jade seal. His expression was serious. "Mother Empress, don't worry. I don't have any other abilities, but if someone wants to plot against the Li state, I will definitely bite off a piece of her flesh and fight with my life. I won't let you down." The imperial daughters all curled their lips. "You're such a coward, yet you want to bite off a piece of meat from someone else. You should just avoid it whenever you see it." Queen's eyes were a little blurry, and she was not as sharp as before. Ningxu checked on Queen's condition. Her organs were beginning to bleed, and she was definitely not going to survive. "Get out, all of you, get out. Bing Yan, stay. Call those officials in," Queen said, clenching her teeth. When she spoke, she was a little tongue-tied, and her tongue was beginning to stiffen. "Mother Empress." The other princesses were not satisfied. They all wanted to stay. "I'll say it," Queen said fiercely. The princesses had no choice. Due to Queen's pressure, they could only go out of the tent and call in the officials who were kneeling outside. Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan also came out of the tent. Ni Baiwei carefully glanced at Fenjiuxuan, who had a lot on his mind, and said, "Big sister is going to become the empress. You." Ni Baiwei wanted to ask Fenjiuxuan if he would not like her anymore. He liked the big sister of the empress. Fenjiuxuan said, "Protect yourself well. I hope that the best thing in the world is yours." Ni Baiwei was very confused. What did he mean by the best thing in the world? Fenjiuxuan returned to his tent. Ni Baiwei was a little sad. Now, Fenjiuxuan was ignoring her. This feeling was very uncomfortable. In front of everyone, the Empress announced that the Crown Princess would be the new Empress. This caused the officials to begin whispering. Some of the officials raised objections on the spot. Some of the officials bet on other princesses, but they did not expect that the Crown Princess would actually inherit the throne. In the past, she only had the identity of the Crown Princess. Everyone only treated it as a joke. They did not put the identity of the Empress in their eyes at all. Now that she was going to become the Empress, it was like a drop of water in boiling oil. Suddenly, the officials exploded. They advised the Empress not to pass the throne to the Crown Princess, who had no virtue and no talent. Ningxu stood beside the bed and did not say a word. He only remembered these officials in his heart and used his eyes to stare at them. Facing Ningxu's cold eyes, some of the officials were a little speechless. Looking at the Empress, the more they argued with her, the more stubborn she would be. She would not turn back until she hit the southern wall. Even the Crown Princess might not be able to secure the throne. In the future, they would slowly plan. Now, it was too obvious. The Crown Princess would settle accounts after the autumn and kill indiscriminately. If she died, then she died. What else could there be? Thus, these officials temporarily calmed down. Bing Yan. The Empress vaguely called out to Ningxu. Ningxu held the Empress's hand. Naturally, tears flowed out of his eyes. After the Empress died, there would be no one to protect these princesses, including her. Also, the Ni clan's empire would be gone. This was the natural reaction of this body. The Empress's spirit was already very absent-minded. Live on. Ningxu could not help but grin. The Empress was still clear about the situation she was about to face. If she really loved her, she would pass the throne to someone else. Even if she was abolished as the Crown Princess, she would still be able to save her life. However, putting her in a foreseeable massacre. Her Majesty the Empress was so fair to all her children. It all depended on who lived on. Ning Shu did not blame the Empress at all. The Empress had a plan in her heart, but she did not expect a fish to escape the net. That fish was the castrated Ni Baiwei, who handed the Ni clan's empire to someone else. The Ni clan's ancestral tablets were smashed, and they were not allowed to enjoy the incense. The clansmen were all slaughtered. The glory, splendor, wealth, and splendor changed rapidly. Thank you, Mother Empress. I understand. Ning Shu used his lips to kiss the back of the Empress's hand. Leave. The Empress closed her eyes. Her chest rose and fell slightly. Her breathing was weak, and her face was green. It seemed that she was about to die. Ning Shu took the imperial jade seal and left the tent. This item was now hers. No one could take it away from her. If one came, she would kill two. Ning Shu returned to the tent. Fenjiuxuan stood up to welcome Ning Shu. Your Highness has returned. How is Her Majesty? Ning Shu sat down and said indifferently, the situation is not too good. She has been poisoned. I really want to know who was the culprit. Fenjiuxuan poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu. It is not important who was the culprit. What is important is how to get out of this forest and return to the palace. Ning Shu smiled and looked at Fenjiuxuan. Do you have any good ideas? Chapter 2135. Fenjiuxuan hesitated, looked at Ning Shu, and said, You might be angry with what I said. If you know I will be angry, then don't say it. Ning Shu's expression was cold as he took a sip of tea. Fenjiuxuan was speechless. The atmosphere in the tent was a bit stagnant, and Fenjiuxuan didn't know how to respond. Her Majesty the Empress has passed away. Her Majesty has passed away. Outside the tent, there was a sharp and sad voice. Everyone knelt on the ground, and some maids and guards even cried. Ning Shu opened the curtain and went to the Empress' tent. He saw the Empress lying on the bed, her face ashen. Ning Shu knelt in front of the Empress and kowtowed to her body. The other princesses all stared at Ning Shu, but Ning Shu ignored them. He stood on the platform and shouted that the hunt was over, and now the Empress' noble body was to be sent back to the palace. Eldest royal sister, what right do you have to inherit the throne? You were the one who killed my mother. A bastard like you who killed your mother has no right to be the Li Kingdom's emperor. A royal princess rebuked Ning Shu. Ning Shu took out the imperial jade seal and shouted to the guards, If anyone dares to make trouble for me, kill them. Take these princesses back to the capital, Ning Shu said coldly. What right do you have to take us? Don't forget that you are not the empress yet. You haven't even had the coronation ceremony. The Empress' body is not even cold, and you want to kill your sisters, the third princess said angrily. Ning Shu said, What are you waiting for? Don't even think about making trouble while the Empress is in the coffin. Do you want to go back, or do you want me to kill you now? You. The princesses left and got on the carriage. Everything could wait until they got back to the capital. Right now, Ni Bingyan was just bluffing. The weather was so hot that the corpse had to be carried back to the palace as quickly as possible. Some guards escorted the princess who wanted to cause trouble, and some guards escorted the empress's corpse. Ning Shu sat in the carriage. Sitting across from him, Fenjiuxuan said to Ning Shu, Your Majesty, this time we return to the palace, we will face a perilous situation. We know, Ning Shu said calmly. She didn't even lift her eyelids, much less look at Feng Yuxuan. Fenjiuxuan said to Ning Shu, Yuxuan has a plan. Speak. She had already been confirmed as the next successor by the Empress, so it was time for some of the monsters to show their true colors. A cicada shedding its carapace. Let someone bear the brunt of the storm for you, Your Majesty, Fenjiuxuan said. Ning Shu opened his eyes and looked at Fenjiuxuan with a half-smile. He asked, Who do you think will bear the brunt of the storm for me? Fen Jiuxuan looked at Ning Shu's eyes. He hesitated for a while before saying, I think the seventh princess will do. Your Majesty, you can think of passing the throne to the seventh princess. When the dust settles, your Majesty can rest easy. Ning Shu almost laughed out loud. It was very difficult to ascend to the throne, but abdicating was something that could be done in minutes. Everything she did was for the throne. Now, she was going to abdicate the throne to Ni Baiwei, and then Ni Baiwei would abdicate the throne to Fen Jiuxuan. Was Fen Jiuxuan stupid? Or did he think she was stupid? She guessed he thought she was stupid. Ning Shu smiled faintly and said, what if little seven doesn't return the throne to me by then? When the dust settles, if the seventh princess doesn't return the throne to you, you can just kill her. Fen Jiuxuan's tone was murderous. Ning Shu was speechless. Does Ni Baiwei know your thoughts? Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Fen Jiuxuan. Fen Jiuxuan said, Yushuan regrets what I did before. Yushuan knows that your Majesty has a knot in your heart. The seventh princess will definitely die, but it's not bad to be used before she dies. Maybe your Majesty will think that Yushuan is cruel, but Yushuan can only think about your Majesty now. After returning to the palace, your Majesty's situation will be very difficult. Ning Shu said, I thank you. My whole family thanks you. Fen Jiuxuan smiled. Everything Yushuan does is for your Majesty. Ning Shu also smiled. Fen Jiuxuan poured tea for Ning Shu. Ning Shu took it and smelled it. It smells good. Ning Shu put the cup on the small tea table and didn't drink it. Fen Jiuxuan's eyes flickered. Why doesn't your Majesty drink it? Because I'm not thirsty. There was something in the tea. No matter how fierce Fen Jiuxuan said and how cruel he was to Ni Baiwei, he still had to give the throne to Ni Baiwei, and then Ni Baiwei would give the throne to Fen Jiuxuan. Fen Jiuxuan should know what kind of person Ni Baiwei was. She had no ambition. To be precise, she was a daughter who was even less promising than the crown princess. Such a woman couldn't even be the emperor. The carriage suddenly stopped. The teacup on the tea table fell on the carriage and rolled twice in the carriage, wetting Ning Shu's shoes. What's going on? Ning Shu asked calmly. A guard reported to Ning Shu, Your Majesty, there are people blocking the carriage in front. They are quite bold to block the emperor's carriage. Fen Jiuxuan lifted the curtain for Ning Shu. Ning Shu got off the carriage and saw a group of black-clothed people. Roughly counting, there were about 200 people. Wearing black clothes in the day, they must be crazy. Ning Shu moved his neck, which made cracking sounds. Someone shouted at the black-clothed people, Who are you? We killed the new emperor. The leader of the black-clothed people sneered. Ning Shu patted his chest. I'm so scared. Not only was the new emperor here, but there were also some civil and military officials and several imperial princesses. If everyone died, the imperial court would be in chaos. How dare you? Fen Jiuxuan stood beside Ning Shu and scolded. Ning Shu kicked away Fen Jiuxuan who was standing beside him. Fen Jiuxuan looked at Ning Shu in shock. Ni Baiwei wanted to walk over when she saw her Prince Charming being treated like this, but she stopped. Your Majesty. Fen Jiuxuan stood up and looked at Ning Shu blankly. I'm here. You don't have the right to speak. Fen Jiuxuan suddenly laughed when he was treated like this. He patted the leaves off his clothes and slowly walked to the black-clothed people. Your Majesty, this is the coronation gift I prepared for you. Ning Shu's expression didn't change. And then? So. The Li state should have a new emperor. How can a woman be the master? It's time for a man to take over. Ni Baiwei felt that Fen Jiuxuan's words made sense. Since the black-clothed people were Fen Jiuxuan's people, she wouldn't be in any danger. Ning Shu's expression did not change as he asked, Did you kill my mother queen? She knew that Fen Jiuxuan wasn't simple, but she didn't expect him to have so many men of sacrifice. Moreover, these men of sacrifice were all soaked in medicine. They were almost invulnerable and didn't fear death. In the plot, even if Ni Baiwei didn't abdicate, Fen Jiuxuan could still ascend the throne. However, Ni Baiwei loved Fen Jiuxuan and was willing to be the man behind Fen Jiuxuan. Chapter 2136. The meaning of Ni Baiwei's existence was to make Fen Jiuxuan a winner in life. Then, she would obtain love and become the only woman in the harem. She would obtain the love of the emperor and be with him forever. Ning Shu asked, "Did you kill my empress mother?" Fen Jiuxuan smiled and appeared to be a peerless beauty. Under the contrast of the falling leaves, he looked like a handsome man who had walked out of a painting. Fen Jiuxuan said, "Your Majesty, you were the one who told Yuxuan to do it." The moment Fen Jiuxuan said this, the officials began to whisper. Someone even said, "Crown Princess, it is disgraceful to kill your mother." Ning Shu tilted her head and looked at this official. "You are an official from the Ministry of Rights, right? Remember to look at your surroundings when you accuse me. You might be killed, so have some brains. If these assassins can't kill you, then I will kill you first." Ning Shu's face carried a dense murderous aura that made it hard for others to breathe. The officials no longer dared to say anything. Ni Baiwei walked to Ning Shu's side and whispered, "Big sister, let's talk things out. Fighting and killing is not a solution. Moreover, you two are husband and wife, so there is nothing that can't be talked about." Scram! Ning Shu directly slapped Ni Baiwei's face, causing her to become muddled. She fell to the ground and blankly covered her face. "Who do you think you are to be worthy of talking to me? Are you deaf or blind? You heard him say that he killed Empress Mother and now wants to rebel. This kind of disloyal and unjust thing, let me talk to him. You two are birds of a feather and have no sense of shame." Ning Shu pulled out the saber on the guard's waist. Ni Baiwei retreated in horror. Ning Shu squatted down and held Ni Baiwei's chin and patted her face. "Good child, don't make me unhappy, okay? I don't want to talk about you and Fen Jiuxuan exchanging letters. I also don't want to talk about your affair being attacked by wolves. Now, Fen Jiuxuan wants me to give the throne to you. Are you surprised? Is it exciting?" Ning Shu and Ni Baiwei were frightened by Ning Shu's appearance. She trembled and said, I didn't have an affair with Fen Jiuxuan. We are innocent." Ning Shu patted Ni Baiwei's face. "Oh, you want to tell me that your love is innocent, touching heaven and earth, and that I am the evil person who obstructs your love? You are the evil person to begin with." Ning Shu wiped her hands on Ni Baiwei's clothes. "Don't say that I don't have sisterly affection. I will definitely fulfill your touching love. Believe me." Ni Baiwei's pupils quivered. She bit her lips tightly and looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of fear. Feng Yuxuan clapped his hands. "Your Highness the Crown Princess is really mighty. You're quite capable of bullying the weak. When did Yuxuan say that he was in love with the 7th princess? The person Yuxuan loves is you." Ning Shu smiled. "Little 7 will be sad if you say that." Ni Baiwei shrank into a ball as soon as she met Ning Shu's eyes. Her eyes were not fierce and even indifferent, but it made Ni Baiwei feel that she was a wild beast that chose people to devour. She did not roar or show any fierceness. It was so natural that Ni Baiwei trembled all over. Fen Jiuxuan stretched out her hand. "Regardless of whether your highness believes it or not, Yuxuan loves your highness. Yuxuan wants your highness to become Yuxuan's empress. Yuxuan will protect your highness for the rest of your life. Yuxuan will be together with your highness for the rest of your life. Yuxuan will not be troubled by the court officials and will love your highness for the rest of your life." Ning Shu clenched the hilt in her hand. "Go to hell. This old lady wants to be the emperor. Fenjiaxuan elegantly waved to the assassins behind her, "Kill everyone." In an instant, all the assassins rushed towards the court officials and the crown princess. The crown princess and the court officials all knew martial arts, but they tacitly ignored Ning Shu, who did not know martial arts. Fenjiaxuan and Ning Shu walked over, still smiling elegantly. "Women's rule has reached the end of the road. It's time for men to take over. You women have your period every month and will give birth. Giving birth is a matter of life and death. Moreover, when you are pregnant for 10 months, you can't do anything. It's very dangerous and you will face miscarriage. Even if you are pregnant for 10 months and are about to give birth, once something happens during the birth, the regime will be unstable. However, men don't have such concerns and won't have any problems during the birth. Isn't it good to enjoy men's love? Ning Shu, so give the throne to Yushuan. Yushuan will definitely protect the Li state well and make the Li state better." Fenjiaxuan stretched out her hand. Ning Shu could not help but laugh out loud. "You killed my mother and took over my Ni family's country. I still have to lead a harem and wait for you to come at any time. You can have sex whenever you want, right? Not to mention love. If you want to have a deep relationship, go to hell. Since you are so awesome, why don't you just go to heaven?" Ning Shu said directly. "The Imperial Jade Seal is with me. If you have the ability, come and take it." "Bing Yen, don't be like this. I don't want to hurt you," Fenjiaxuan said helplessly. "Why are you so sure that Yushuan killed the late emperor? He looks like the elegant son of the prime minister, but I didn't expect him to like dealing with these things." "A tamed bird, a scorpion that was raised in poison," Ning Shu said coldly. Fenjiaxuan slapped her forehead and suddenly realized, "So that bird was intercepted by you. In that case, some things were planned by your highness. Your highness, Yushuan is really admiring you more and more." "Ning Shu, aren't you admiring Ni Bai Wei? Why are you admiring me now? Stupid people have the cuteness of stupid people, smart people have the charm of smart people." Ning Shu said to the dumbstruck Ni Bai Wei, "Do you see that? Your man wants me to be with you." Ning Shu smiled, "This old lady wants to be the emperor. Don't be stubborn. You don't have the ability to resist now." Fenjiaxuan pointed at the fighting guards. The assassin coldly and mercilessly reaped the lives of the guards and courtiers. There were already many corpses on the ground. Ning Shu's heart didn't waver. The courtiers that died would be replaced by replacements. Moreover, most of them were the subordinates of other princesses. When they returned to the capital, they would still cause trouble for her. Ning Shu's heart ached for the guards. "Then let the battle end quickly." Ning Shu raised her blade and jumped up, rushing towards Fenjiaxuan. Fenjiaxuan was shocked. Didn't they say that the crown princess didn't know martial arts? How did she suddenly know martial arts? The fact that the crown princess couldn't practice martial arts was appraised by many experts. They said that the crown princess's veins were blocked and she wasn't born to practice martial arts. Chapter 2137. Fenjiaxuan, who had always been confident of victory, felt his heart go numb. How could the crown princess know martial arts now? Could it be that she had been hiding her strength all this time? If that was the case, then it was no wonder that the empress had been unwilling to cripple Ni Bingyan. Even he had been deceived. Fenjiaxuan's hands were numb from Ning Shu's strength. He felt a little anxious and immediately blew the whistle. Many assassins heard the whistle and came to Fenjiaxuan's rescue. Ning Shu was surrounded by assassins. Even if Ning Shu used a knife, he could not leave a scar on the assassins' bodies. It was like an iron bastion. Ning Shu used spiritual energy to attach to the knife. With a light stroke, he cut off the assassin's head. Ning Shu spun his body and released spiritual energy comparable to the sharpest weapon in the world. He directly cut the assassin's body in half. No assassin could approach Ning Shu's body. Everyone present was incomparably shocked. She was clearly a piece of trash, but they did not expect her to hide her strength so deeply. Had the previous crown princess always been hiding her strength? This feeling was as absurd as an ant using a pair of pincers to overturn an elephant. Ning Shu was like a god of death. His hair was flying, and his eyes were sharp. The assassins, who had been soaked in medicine until their skin was very hard and ordinary weapons could not harm them, were a little afraid to approach Ning Shu. Fenjiuxuan closed his eyes. His plan had been wasted. His mother had been sent out of the capital. He began to move the people of the Feng clan to leave a path of retreat. He could also make a comeback. However, Fenjiuxuan now doubted whether he could leave. Ning Shu held the knife. The tip of the knife slid on the ground. Blood dripped from the blade onto the dirt. Ning Shu and Fenjiuxuan walked over. Fenjiuxuan looked calm. Instead, he smiled and said, "The woman I love is indeed the most powerful person in the world." Ning Shu drew a line across Fenjiuxuan's knee. Fenjiuxuan's expression froze, and he immediately knelt down in front of Ning Shu. "I'll cripple your legs first. Eldest imperial sister, please don't hurt him again." With half of her swollen face, Ni Baiwei stood in front of Fenjiuxuan and said, "Do you really want to hurt him like this? Empress Mother gave birth to us, raised us, and gave us glory and wealth. He used a poisonous insect to bite our mother, yet you still want to beg for mercy for the enemy who killed your mother. Ni Baiwei, is there really a problem with your brain?" Ning Shu coldly said, "However, you have no affection for us." I. Ni Baiwei was speechless. She directly begged Ning Shu, "Eldest imperial sister, if revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? You are already the empress, can you please let go of Fenjiuxuan? Can you be a bit more magnanimous?" Ni Baiwei kowtowed to Ning Shu. Ning Shu rolled her eyes. She hated people who would ask her to be magnanimous the most. If she didn't forgive them, then she would be stingy. Moreover, the Holy Mother also had to choose her partner. She was a fake Holy Mother who was generous at the expense of others. She hoped that in the future, she would live on the keyboard. If it wasn't for her martial arts, she would be the one kneeling on the ground right now. At that time, Ni Baiwei didn't even know if she would plead for mercy for them. Ning Shu slapped Ni Baiwei on the other side, "I didn't kill you because I want to show you something interesting." When the assassins saw that their master was captured, they tried their best to save Fenjiuxuan. However, Ning Shu killed every one of them that came. The ground was filled with broken limbs and steaming internal organs. Ordinary knives couldn't cut the assassin's skin, so they used compressed spiritual energy. Everyone present was so frightened by Ning Shu's brutality that their legs trembled. Some people couldn't stand it and directly vomited. Ning Shu got the guards to bury the corpses and locked Fenjiuxuan in a cage. Fenjiuxuan, who had his legs crippled, could only sit in the cage. Everyone returned to the capital with pale faces. Their minds were filled with intestines and broken limbs. The visual impact was so great that they couldn't eat for a month. Those with weaker mental strength might even have nightmares at night. Fenjiuxuan was locked up in 3 layers. As for Fenjiuxuan's martial arts, Ning Shu didn't plan to cripple Fenjiuxuan. When the time came, Fenjiuxuan would regret that he had martial arts. Ning Shu buried the empress in the imperial mausoleum. Then, he held the coronation ceremony. Ning Shu sat on the dragon throne and glanced at the ministers kneeling on the ground. He slowly said, "My beloved ministers, please rise." Ning Shu went to the prison to see Fenjiuxuan. Although Fenjiuxuan was in prison, his clothes and food were prepared according to the empress. He was well treated. Fenjiuxuan saw Ning Shu and said, "You're here. What do you want to do?" Fenjiuxuan had already thought of being tortured. However, he ate a sumptuous and exquisite meal every day. His body was also taken care of. He didn't suffer at all, except that he couldn't walk. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Of course I'm going to listen to Ni Bai Wei. How can I really do anything to you? Even if you're going to die, I'll treat you better." We didn't waste our time as husband and wife. Fenjiaxuan stared at Ning Shu and said, "I didn't expect you to hide the deepest among the princesses." Ning Shu smiled and said, "What do you mean by hiding? What did I hide?" Later, Ning Shu announced Fenjiaxuan's crime in the imperial court. Just this crime alone was enough to wipe out his entire family. Fenjiaxuan secretly took his family away. However, wasn't there still Fenjiaxuan? Ning Shu sentenced Fenjiaxuan to death by 1,000 cuts. Ni Bai Wei was grounded in the palace. When she accidentally heard the palace maids talking about Fenjiaxuan being executed by 1,000 cuts, her heart was in a mess. She was so heartbroken that she couldn't breathe. Ni Bingyan was really cruel to want to execute Fenjiaxuan. Ni Bai Wei had never seen a real execution, but when she heard the word death by 1,000 cuts, she was terrified. Her body trembled and kept crying to see Ning Shu. However, she was stopped by the guards. She wanted to see Ning Shu through various means. For example, she wrote a blood letter and injured herself just to see Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't care about Ni Bai Wei. Fenjiaxuan could be said to be Ni Bai Wei's only hope in this world. Ni Bai Wei had no relatives here. Even if she had relatives, they were fake. She didn't have any friends. She only had Fenjiaxuan as her lover. What kind of heart-wrenching pain was that? When Fenjiaxuan heard Ning Shu's sentence, he attempted to commit suicide. It wasn't that no one came to save him. Waves after waves of people came to save him. However, this place was surrounded like an iron bucket. People from the outside couldn't enter at all. After knowing that he was going to be executed by 1,000 cuts, he would rather die than suffer such pain. That cold-hearted person didn't have any pity or feelings for him. However, Fenjiaxuan was closely watched. He wasn't given a way to commit suicide. The jailer here was watching Fenjiaxuan from morning till night. Her Majesty said that she wanted to see Fenjiaxuan alive, not dead. Chapter 2138. Ever since Fenjiaxuan was sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts, Ni Bai Wei and Fenjiaxuan had been making a ruckus. Fenjiaxuan wanted to commit suicide. Once, he wanted to pierce his own throat with chopsticks, but he was discovered by the jailer. As a result, the jailer could only tie Fenjiaxuan up and feed him. Ni Bai Wei was an underage princess and was still living in the palace. She had been grounded in the palace and could not go out. She thought of various ways to attract Ning Shu's attention and plead for Fenjiaxuan in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu did not care about her at all. Moreover, Ning Shu knew that Ni Bai Wei would definitely not commit suicide because if she committed suicide, Fenjiaxuan would not be able to live. She did not dare to commit suicide and still wanted to plead for Fenjiaxuan. After the verdict was issued, Ning Shu had not carried it out. He locked Fenjiaxuan in prison and did not say when Fenjiaxuan would be sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. This feeling of waiting for death was really terrible. Fenjiaxuan repeatedly said that he wanted to see Ning Shu, but Ning Shu ignored him. Ning Shu had more important things to do, and that was to revise the law. In addition to the new emperor's enthronement, some areas were exempted from taxes. Ning Shu felt that he still had to make some achievements. The national law was one aspect. All the things that were relatively vague in criminal cases had to be filled up. Some cases of kidnapping also had to be legislated. In ancient times, it was normal to buy and sell people. The private transactions were even more shocking. Ning Shu did not mention some formal channels. Some families could not survive and sold their children for some money. However, it was not allowed for kidnappers to kidnap other people's children to do business. If a law was made, the kidnappers could also be convicted. Ning Shu talked about the legislation in the court. The third princess stood up. Your Majesty. Ning Shu looked at her expressionlessly. What do you think? If the criminal law is too harsh, it will be worse for the Li state. The third princess looked at Ning Shu's face and thought of the broken limbs and warm internal organs in the forest. Such a cruel person as the emperor of the Li state was simply a disaster for the Li state. Even so, the third princess still habitually despised Ning Shu. After all, the image of a coward for so many years had been deeply ingrained in her heart. I agree. I agree. A large group of officials stood up to oppose Ning Shu. Ning Shu only said indifferently, what tyrannical government is fiercer than a tiger? If I remember correctly, isn't tyrannical government just exorbitant taxes? Since when did I talk about tyrannical government with a bunch of criminals? The revised law will not affect the normal people's lives. It will only make the vague areas have laws to follow and laws to judge. Ning Shu stood up from the dragon throne and walked step by step to the third princess. Third princess, tell me, what is harsh government? Do I have harsh government? The third princess bit her lip and did not speak. Ning Shu flicked his sleeves and said lightly, I think it is probably because I have held it in for too long. Now there is suddenly no one to control me. I can do whatever I want. This feeling is a bit good. You also know that when people hold it in for too long, it is easy to become psychopathic and do things that I cannot imagine. Officials, tyrant. Who has an opinion? Ning Shu stood in front of the dragon throne and asked. We do not have an opinion. The officials all knelt on the ground. They said that they did not have an opinion, but no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. But Ning Shu did not care. He was very pleased and said, my officials are all reasonable people. They are people who are willing to risk their lives for the Li state. This matter will be handled by the Ministry of Justice. This is a little idea of mine. Minister Li, you can edit it. I trust you very much. I believe that you will not let me down, right? Ning Shu said to the Minister of the Ministry of Justice with a pleasant expression. Minister Li took the scroll from the maid's hand, bowed, and said with a trembling voice, yes, sir. Good. If there is anything else, quickly report it, Ning Shu said. The official of the Ministry of Rights stood up and said, the Empress has ascended the throne. She should continue to have children. Well, he wanted to find a man for her. Ning Shu said, the drought in the north has not been resolved. Fengjing's son, Fenjiuxuan, has rebelled. Fengjing has not given me a report yet. Who will go to the north to see what the situation is like? The court was silent. Ning Shu sighed and said, I am a little disappointed. No one is interested in serious matters. Why are they so eager to find a man for me? The minister of the Ministry of Rights thought, I don't care about the drought. It has nothing to do with me. It is no longer within the scope of my duties. Now we don't know what the situation is over there. We don't know if Fengjing will have thoughts of rebelling, so who will go? Ning Shu looked at the third princess with a smile. Third princess, you go. When the Empress was here, she always said that you were a capable person. I believe that you can solve this matter perfectly. The third princess's face was ashen, and she did not speak. After the court, Ning Shu said directly to the third princess, be good. Otherwise, I will kill you in minutes. The reason why I kept you alive was that the Empress did not want us sisters to kill each other. I know you are not convinced, so just hold it in. If you play tricks again, don't blame me for not being polite. My sister is not disloyal. Whether you are disloyal or not is not up to your mouth to decide. Ning Shu moved his neck, and it made a cracking sound. I don't know why, but I really want to kill. The third princess thought of Ning Shu's battle and the cruel means she had used. She suddenly swallowed her saliva and took 2 steps back. What if this thing was cut in half at the waist? She had been holding it in for too long. The empress was deceived by the appearance of the first princess. Ning Shu put his hand on the third princess's shoulder and asked, "You know what to do." "My sister will deal with the drought in the north well," the third princess said. Ning Shu smiled. "I am very pleased." The third princess thought, "What the hell are you laughing at? Maybe the things in the woods were too creepy." Now the third princess saw that Ning Shu's every pore was exuding a tyrannical aura. She felt that this guy could kill her at any time. Even if he was laughing, she felt that he was laughing. He pulled out his sword and cut her in half. He obviously knew martial arts, but he had never shown it for so many years. Now he was like a beast that had been released from the cage, very dangerous. Ning Shu looked at the third princess's pale face and did not know what she was thinking that could scare him like this. Ning Shu felt that he was not that scary. At most, he was a little scary when he killed people. However, those assassins had strong bones. How could he kill them without using a little strength? Using compressed spiritual chi, killing people was like cutting tofu. It was very tender. It was a bit difficult to cut tofu in a nice way and not so scary. If you meet people from the Feng family, take them back if you can. The empress just wanted Feng Jing to go to the disaster relief, but it gave Fenjiuxuan a chance to rebel. Chapter 2139. Even though they were at a disadvantage, Fenjiuxuan could still find an opportunity to make the Feng family slowly move away. Feng Jing was no longer in the capital, so the Feng family's actions were not so eye-catching. Feng Yuxuan didn't have to worry anymore. With Ni Baiwei's IQ, she would be fooled by Fenjiuxuan. The third princess took her leave. She was going to the north. If the third princess dared to make the disaster victims in the north rebel, there were many ways to deal with the third princess. She had just ascended the throne. If the third princess did not know what was good for her, she would definitely find ways to make trouble for her. "Your Majesty, the seventh princess of the Moon Fairy Palace wants to see your Majesty, or she will kill herself," the maid whispered to Ning Shu. "As long as she doesn't die," Ning Shu said casually, then sat down and began to read the memorials. The maid ground the red cinnabar ink stick and did not make a sound. Not long after, a maid said that the seventh princess had hit the wall, and now her face was covered with blood. Ning Shu asked the maid to call the imperial doctor, then went to the Moon Fairy Palace and walked into the bedroom. The seventh princess' face was covered with blood, but she did not faint. She was still struggling to rush out of the palace. Little 7. Ning Shu looked at Ni Baiwei. When Ni Baiwei saw Ning Shu, she immediately knelt down and cried to Ning Shu. "Big sister, no, your Majesty, please let Fenjiuxuan go. I am willing to give up my identity as a princess and live in seclusion with Fenjiuxuan from now on. I will not do anything to hurt you, please." Ning Shu walked in front of Ni Baiwei, squatted down, took a handkerchief to wipe the blood on Ni Baiwei's face, and said faintly, "Little 7, why do you hurt yourself so much? A girl's face is so important. Why do you have to hurt your body like this?" Ni Baiwei's whole body was trembling, and her voice was trembling. "Your Majesty, please, Fenjiuxuan did not do it on purpose. He was just too angry and wanted, what do you want? Because it's unfair. He just wants to be fair. Didn't he not hurt you in the end? You two are husband and wife. One night together as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. Can you not kill me with 1,000 cuts? I'm willing to give up everything, change my name, and live a normal life with him." Ni Baiwei had probably made a draft in her heart, so her words were very smooth. Ning Shu wiped the blood on Ni Baiwei's face and looked at the miserable Ni Baiwei. He asked, "So you have already thought of it for me? Should I thank you? Big sister, you are already the empress. Why are you still so ruthless? Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? Ni Baiwei's heart was crumbling. Under the other party's aura, her voice was very loud. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by a hand. Ni Baiwei grabbed Ning Shu's skirt. Eldest imperial sister, I beg you. Can you let Feng Yuxuan go? Ning Shu sighed. Do you know how much my heart aches when you look like this? Do you know how much my heart aches? Ni Baiwei smiled through her tears. She wiped her tears, but her face was covered in blood. Thank you, eldest imperial sister. I knew that eldest imperial sister was the most tolerant and loved me the most. Ning Shu was speechless. Take good care of your body. How can you do things without a good body? Do you understand? Eat well and sleep well. Leave the other things to me. Ning Shu wiped the blood on Ni Baiwei's face. Look at the wound on your head. If it leaves a scar, I wonder if your brother-in-law will still like you. Ni Baiwei cried and laughed. Eldest imperial sister, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. If you know you were wrong, why did you still do it? Why are you still so unrepentant? Ni Baiwei bit her lips and said, because love is not something you can control. I also thought of giving up, but I can't do it. I can give up everything, but I can't live without Fengjiaxuan. Oh, I understand. Ning Shu tilted her head. If I find out that you didn't eat well or take good care of your body, I will punish Fengjiaxuan. I will definitely take good care of my body. Thank you, eldest imperial sister. Ning Shu gently patted Ni Baiwei's face, call me your majesty the empress. Your majesty. Ning Shu said, good girl. Why aren't you helping the seventh princess to the bed and taking good care of her? Ning Shu said to the palace maids. Ning Shu walked out of the Moon Immortal Palace and looked back at the palace. Ning Shu felt that some people were shameless. I only want Fengjiaxuan. I don't want anything else. I don't want the identity of an imperial princess. It's really touching. Until now, Fengjiaxuan was still her legal husband. Ni Baiwei pulled her and said that she would help them. Of course, she would help them. Ning Shu went to the Ministry of Justice to check on the progress of the revision of the code. Half of the officials in the Ministry of Justice were involved in the revision of the code. Ning Shu was still very satisfied. The next part of his life was to cultivate, write memorials, attend court, and talk with a group of ministers. When Ning Shu's face was cold and full of killing intent, it made some of the ministers tremble in fear. Ning Shu was not easy to serve. Instead, the other party would pay attention to him at all times, afraid that Ning Shu would go crazy and start a massacre. There was no one who was not afraid of death. A bad life was better than a good death, especially those who became officials with great difficulty. In terms of moral integrity, there was really no moral integrity. Very few officials would die with a dynasty. Ning Shu often had a cold face. Sitting on the dragon throne, his aura was fully released, and he even released pressure. The ministers would carefully consider before speaking. They were afraid that they would make Ning Shu unhappy. As the empress appointed by the late emperor, Ning Shu also took over the late emperor's secret guards. These secret guards had a huge network of connections. Many ministers had secret guards in their residences. Ning Shu said that he always felt that the empress was watching him at all times. Ning Shu had already found people to replace the ministers that Fengjiaxuan had killed. Some of them were also arranged by the late emperor. These people were not outstanding, and some were even released. The secret guards gave him a list. Ning Shu felt that the person who commissioned this was not a simple character. It was just that she died too unjustly. She only remembered to guard against her daughter, but she did not expect that she would die in the hands of her daughter's legal husband. Who would have thought that the peerless and untainted Fengjiaxuan would associate with these people, and even train such a powerful assassin? Training such an assassin would cost a lot of money. 200 people would need an astronomical amount of medicinal herbs. According to Prime Minister Feng's salary, it was obviously not enough to support such expenses. Therefore, Fen Jiuquan should have his own base, and a certain source of income. Ning Shu was not clear about these things. He could only send secret guards to investigate. Moreover, the people of the Feng family had been transferred away by Fen Jiuquan. To actually use a large amount of medicinal herbs without being noticed, then Fen Jiuquan might have a medical center. It was normal for a medical center to need medicinal herbs. Chapter 2140. Ning Shu sent the secret guards to investigate the medical centers in and around the capital city. Other than the medical centers, what other profiteering could support Fen Jiuquan's rise? The economic foundation determined the superstructure. Without money, nothing could be done. There were also profiteers, which was pimping. Especially the brothels, which were filled with luxury. The brothels in this place were a bit interesting. There were men and women, and some of them had special hobbies. The brothels were also investigated. The basic things were almost done. Ning Shu began to rummage through the treasury to see if there were any treasures. It would be best if it was the world's origin. Although her world's origin was complete, she would be rich if she could find one. After all, the organization's prices were so high now. Even if she sold it, she could still make a profit. In fact, the world's origin was not complete because light and darkness had not been formed yet. Moreover, she did not know if it was the light and darkness world's origin. It was very likely that it was not at all. Therefore, Ning Shu still had to continue looking for the world's origin. She could not stop looking for the world's origin. Moreover, she could find the world's origin while doing missions. If she found this world, she would have profited. If she did not find it, there would still be missions in this world and rewards. Ning Shu thought that she could see a magnificent treasury, but in the end, there was nothing good in it. Basically, it was all useless things. The late emperor's private treasury was also empty. She reckoned that all the money had been spent. Raising secret guards and a large group of secret guards also cost money. Ning Shu suddenly felt that she was short of money. Short of money. It was not easy to be an emperor. She had to consider whether the people of the world could eat their fill. There were many things to worry about every day. However, it was great. She had special privileges. She used ivory chopsticks to eat and used gold and silver bowls to serve dishes. She used the best things in the world. The rich landlord was capricious. Ning Shu did not find the world's origin. As an emperor, she could not run around the world to look for things. What if something happened? What if there were many unruly people like Fen Jiuquan who always wanted to harm her? Ning Shu, who didn't find anything, was very unhappy. In the end, an official from the Ministry of Justice came to tell her that Fen Jiuquan wanted to see her and wanted to make a deal with her. Fen Jiuquan and Ni Baiwei were really telepathic. When one was done, the other would start again. There was no end to it. Ning Shu said he didn't want to see him, but the officials of the Ministry of Justice said that Fen Jiuquan had been on a hunger strike for 2 days, and it wasn't peaceful recently. There were always people who wanted to break him out of prison. If it weren't for the thorough measures, Fen Jiuquan would have escaped by now. Then let's go take a look. If he starved to death, how would he be able to endure the death of 1,000 cuts? When Ning Shu arrived at the prison warden brought a chair. Ning Shu sat at the door of the prison cell and looked at Fen Jiuquan inside. Fen Jiuquan had already washed up and was sitting on the bed. Yushuan greets your highness. Fen Jiuquan cupped his hands. Ning Shu said, call me your majesty the empress. Your majesty is not quite the same as before, Fen Jiuquan said. You are much more unyielding than before. Of course, I am the empress, Ning Shu said casually. If you don't eat or drink, why are you looking for me? Your Majesty has been on the throne for so long. You shouldn't have found the commander's seal yet, right? Fenjiuxuan said. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes. The commander's seal is in your hands. Fenjiuxuan still had people in the palace, and they were the Empress's people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get the commander's seal. It is in my people's hands. When something happened at the hunting ground, I notified my people to take the commander's seal away. Without the commander's seal, your Majesty is a tiger without claws and teeth. Ning Shu crossed his legs and said casually, then what do you mean? Yushuan wants to make a deal with your Majesty. Yushuan doesn't ask for much. I just want to live. If your Majesty lets Yushuan go, Yushuan will hand over the commander's seal with both hands. Fenjiuxuan said softly. Looking at the finely dressed Ning Shu, he said, Yushuan says that he admires you. Do you believe it? Ning Shu said, if I say that I admire you, would you believe it? Did he think that using the word love would make a woman's heart soften? Love my ass. Fenjiuxuan's words were just to achieve his goal. Your Majesty already hates me to death. How could you admire Yushuan? Fenjiuxuan shook his head helplessly. That's right. If you say that you admire me, I will believe it. Ning Shu touched his temples. Even if it is true, so what? You admire me. What does that have to do with me? It was just to make a woman's heart soften in the name of love. If Feng Yushuan was facing Ni Baiwei now, this method would be 100% effective. Everything would be crowned with the name of love, and it would become high and mighty. It wouldn't be wrong. There was no right or wrong in love. Everything was because of love. It was obviously a beautiful word, but what were the things that were done in the name of love? You said that you admire me. Does Ni Baiwei know? Ning Shu smiled. Ni Baiwei hurt herself to see me. She begged me to let you go. She didn't want the identity of an imperial princess. She just wanted to be with you to save your life. Ning Shu pretended to wipe his tears. If she knew that you said that, how sad would she be? What Feng Yushuan loved was her power because she had something that he had always dreamed of. Fenjiuxuan narrowed his eyes. If I use the commander's seal in exchange for the lives of me and the seventh princess, will your Majesty agree? Ning Shu sneered. Why would I agree? Then your Majesty can forget about getting the commander's seal. Fenjiuxuan touched his knees. His legs were crippled. He couldn't even walk now. His people hadn't come to break the prison yet. This meant that the security around here was very tight. Ning Shu casually said, since you like the commander's seal, I will give it to you to play with. I will just make another commander's seal. Your commander's seal is a waste. Never heard of it. I am the emperor. That's how willful I am. Fenjiuxuan frowned. Your Majesty, the commander's seal can't be so hasty. If His Majesty was really so willful, the bargaining chip in his hand would be gone. Other than this, what else do you want to say? I am very busy. I don't have so much time to waste with you. Ning Shu said indifferently. Fenjiuxuan took a deep breath. Then when does your Majesty plan to punish Yushuan? The crown princess had been on the throne for some time. Although she said that she wanted to execute him, she didn't do anything. She just locked him up. Did she want his mother to come back? He was just a son of the Feng family. If she sacrificed him to protect the Feng family, according to his mother's personality, she would abandon her son. He just wanted to see if someone would come to kidnap him during the execution. The execution would be his last chance. Fenjiuxuan didn't want to die. His years of planning had been ruined by the crown princess, whom he looked down on the most. Even if his legs couldn't walk, he was still alive. As long as the green hills were there, there would be firewood. Ning Shu, do you want to die so much? Just let them wait. Wait anxiously. Chapter 2141. The feeling of not knowing when a steel knife would fall on your head was the most unbearable. Knowing that you would die, waiting for death was the most torturous feeling. I won't let you die. I'll raise you until you're healthy and plump. Only then can I cut your flesh. Your Majesty, could it be that you can't bear for me to die? Fenjiuxuan asked Ning Shu. He had a smile on his face. When he smiled, he looked magnificent. Ning Shu nodded. I can't bear for you to die. Raise yourself well. Although I don't know if you have feelings for Ni Baiwei, if you go on a hunger strike or try to commit suicide again, I will use the same method to deal with Ni Baiwei. Ning Shu stood up and looked down at Fenjiuxuan. Fenjiuxuan looked at Ning Shu. We are husband and wife. You have never trusted me. If you trusted me, this wouldn't have happened. Ning Shu said, I know that you look down on me even with my eyes closed. When you wrote to Ni Baiwei, did you think that we were husband and wife? Then why did you use that method to set me up and make me marry into the crown princess residence? Fenjiuxuan looked at Ning Shu stubbornly. Ning Shu said, if I really set you up, do you think the late empress would let you marry me? The late empress was the kind of person who would stop you from achieving something the more you wanted to achieve it. She was the kind of person who liked to be stubborn. She probably liked to see other people's disappointed faces when their plans failed. It was a bit of a bad taste. Ning Shu said to the officials of the Ministry of Justice, watch him carefully. Pay close attention to the people who deliver food to him. Don't let any random people near this cell. The next day, during the morning court, Ning Shu said directly, I feel that the previous commander's seal is not so good looking. I have decided to make a new one. The courtiers, there were surprises every day during the morning court. Ning Shu ignored the courtiers' expressions and continued, since I have ascended the throne, the new empress must have a new atmosphere. Everyone, think about what style to use to show my might and dominance. The courtiers, since it was a commander's seal, he had to draw out the design of the commander's seal and bring it to the Ministry of Works so that they could make it. Just a word from the emperor, and the servants had broken their legs to run for him. How could he be so mighty and domineering? We don't need the previous commander's seal anymore. The previous commander's seal is also useless. The Ministry of War will announce this to the various armies. Fenjiuxuan wanted to use the commander's seal to threaten her, but she was a willful emperor and could not be threatened. If the document was lost, it would be cancelled. Even if someone found it, it would be useless. Moreover, she was the supreme ruler of the Li state. Ning Shu arranged for Master Li to be placed in an inconspicuous position in the Ministry of Rights. Master Li was very grateful. Initially, he wanted to be an official, but now that he had achieved some merit, he could at least have a new start. Moreover, she had made her presence known to the Empress. She would be promoted as long as she made some achievements. Ning Shu calculated the money in the national treasury and thought about how to use the money in the appropriate places. It was very reasonable to build roads first if one wanted to become rich. However, there were some places that did not need to build roads at all. Instead, it was a waste of money. Ning Shu wanted to dig a canal, but this was a huge project. She did not have enough money on her and would definitely be scolded for wasting money. If she did not have enough money, she would find a way to spend it. The secret guards found the brothels, gambling houses, and medical centers that Fenjiuxuan managed. Ning Shu directly sent people to confiscate these places. The money and everything else would belong to her. However, Ning Shu continued to send people to manage these places. Some people were willing to spend a lot of money in these places. It was very easy to make money. As for taxes, because a new emperor had ascended the throne, there was no income for the time being. However, Ning Shu increased the salaries of the officials a little. This time, the officials all knelt down together for the first time. They did not object to Ning Shu and kowtowed to thank the emperor for his kindness. But then, Ning Shu killed several corrupt officials in a thunderous manner and confiscated their property. Damn, I have already given you such a high salary, but you are still so greedy. Are you worthy of the people? Are you worthy of me? Are you worthy of the high salary that the imperial court gave you? Does your conscience not hurt? Although Ning Shu's reputation among the people changed from the cowardly crown princess to the cruel empress, the people were happy that she dealt with bad people. The court officials were speechless. Was the previous increase in salary a trap? Was she looking for an excuse to deal with them? The court officials were more careful to avoid being caught by the empress. She killed as she pleased and her methods were cruel. She was not the cowardly crown princess of the past at all. Ning Shu decided to dig a canal. This way, the north and south would be smooth. It was a matter that benefited the country and the people. However, when it was proposed in the imperial court, it was met with opposition. The project was too big. Baskets of silver would be poured into the water. Moreover, where would so many people come from? Did the people dig canals every day instead of plowing the land? What if the Li state collapsed because of this? Ning Shu thought about it and decided to raise money first. There was no hurry to dig a canal. It was related to the fate of the country. Perhaps no one would succeed in digging a canal in this generation. This generation saved money, and the next generation dug the canal. There would be a day when it would succeed. As time passed, the courtiers began to accept this empress whose anger could not be quenched. As long as they did not offend her, there would not be any major issues. However, once they did, the empress would act like a lunatic. She was extremely schizophrenic. The third princess came back after solving the problem in the north. She told Ning Shu that she did not see Prime Minister Feng. That was, the Feng family had betrayed the country. It was fine if they could not find them. From now on, the Feng family would be wanted. Even if the Feng family could escape the arrest, they would have to hide like mice. After the third princess finished her task, Ning Shu gave her some privileges and let her choose a department to work in. The other princesses were the same. The salaries of these princesses were very high. Ning Shu felt that it was better to put them in front of others than to let them live a carefree life. It was better to let them be tired of it than to lose money. After stabilizing the situation, Ning Shu felt that he had lost weight. Now he had time to deal with Fenjiuxuan. Of course, he decided to cut Fenjiuxuan into pieces. There was no need to mention the crime. At that time, there were so many people watching, including several princesses. Except for Ni Baiwei, no one pleaded for Fenjiuxuan. The jailer opened the cell, grabbed Fenjiuxuan's arm, and carried him out of the cell. Fenjiuxuan's face was a little pale. "Where are you taking me?" The jailer did not know anything. Fenjiuxuan closed his eyes. Finally, the moment he had been waiting for. No one knew whether he would live or die. Ning Shu went to Ni Baiwei's palace and said to Ni Baiwei, "Little Seven, big sister will take you to see something. I guarantee you will be surprised." Ni Baiwei's face suddenly showed surprise. "Big sister, did you agree to let Fenjiuxuan go?" "Thank you." Ning Shu said, Of course, of course. It will be very unexpected, very exciting, and very surprising." Ning Shu asked the guards to take care of Ni Baiwei and took her to the place of execution. Ni Baiwei was immersed in the joy of seeing Fenjiuxuan. She did not care about anything else. She was looking forward to meeting Fenjiuxuan and what to say when they met. Chapter 2142. The original meaning of death by 1,000 cuts referred to the gradual accumulation of a mountain, and as a form of torture, it meant that the flesh of the criminal would gradually accumulate into a small mountain. During the process of execution, the criminal would have to endure immense pain. This was the most terrifying punishment. When Fenjiuxuan was brought to the execution ground, the surroundings were already filled with people when they heard that someone was going to be sliced into 1,000 pieces. Ning Shu wanted to personally supervise the execution, so he brought Ni Baiwei out of the palace. Along the way, Ni Baiwei nervously clasped her hands together. Ning Shu thanked Ning Shu for his help. Ning Shu didn't say a word. When Ni Baiwei got off the carriage and saw Fenjiuxuan tied to a wooden plank, her mind went blank and her body went soft. It was as if a terrifying energy had exploded in her heart, causing her to lose all her strength. Your Majesty! Ni Baiwei grabbed onto Ning Shu's skirt and shouted with a hoarse voice, "You lied to me, you lied to me." Ning Shu shouted. "How did I lie to you? I want you to see him." Ning Shu squatted down and patted Ni Baiwei's face. "He wanted to seize the Ni clan's empire and killed our mother. Now, I want you to see him for the last time." Ni Baiwei had a metallic taste in her throat and actually spat out a mouthful of blood. She cried and begged Ning Shu, "Your Majesty, you're already the Empress, so why are you still so ruthless? You're a tyrant, and you'll be mocked by the people. Even water can float a boat, but it can also capsize it." Ning Shu leisurely replied, "I only scraped a noble's son, and it has nothing to do with the people. But Fenjiuxuan is also one of your people. Why can't you let him go? I'll leave with him and never let him appear before you again. Why can't you be more lenient? I might love my people, but I can't forgive them. They killed my mother and wanted to kill my people. Do you know? Not long ago, they even threatened me with the commander seal." Ning Shu kicked Ni Baiwei away. Ni Baiwei had taken over the original Little Seven's body. She stared at the surname of the Ni family and handed over the Ni family's empire to someone else. It was normal for dynasties to change. Ni Baiwei was so capable that she was able to turn a country upside down. Getting rid of the person Ni Baiwei cared about the most would make Ni Baiwei feel worse than death. Ni Baiwei was her sister, and she wouldn't kill her sister. Ni Baiwei's entire body was trembling. She looked at Ning Shu and felt that his face had already distorted into that of a demon. The sinister smile on his face was so disgusting and evil. Ni Baiwei murmured, "You will die a horrible death, you will die a horrible death. We are not afraid of any curses. Do you think my halo of faith is fake? It's as if you're so wronged and righteous." If the Ni family was defeated and the Ni family's brothers and sisters were killed, Ni Baiwei wouldn't even blink her eyes and wouldn't call Fenjiuxuan a devil. What a terrifying double standard. If you win, you can do whatever you want, but if someone else wins, you're a demon and you'll die a horrible death. Watch her carefully and block her mouth. Don't let it affect the execution. Ning Shu patted Ni Baiwei's face. Watch carefully. This should be the last time you see Fenjiuxuan. 3 days later, Fenjiuxuan will become a skeleton with peerless elegance. Ni Baiwei was so frightened that her face turned pale and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Ning Shu pleaded, "Your Majesty, why can't you let him go? A night as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. Why must you be so cruel?" Ning Shu was a little impatient. "Do you only know how to say that one night as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life? When you say that, I immediately think of you adulterers. I even have the urge to skin the two of you alive. I let my husband elope with my sister. Are you crazy or am I crazy? Or do you feel wronged?" Ning Shu walked to the execution platform. The sun was high up in the sky. Fenjiuxuan, who was tied up, had his eyes closed and was facing the sun. When he opened his eyes, he was almost blinded by the sun. He heard the people kneeling down and shouting, "Long live," 3 times, and then he heard a cold voice telling him to rise. Feng Yushuan's heart trembled. There was no one who was not afraid of death. His lofty aspirations had died prematurely. Some things had taken a wrong step, and the rest had collapsed like a chain reaction. It was simply uncontrollable. In prison, Fenjiuxuan thought a lot. He felt that Ni Bingyan was his calamity. Not only Ni Baiwei, but also Ni Bingyan. Ni Bingyan hid it very well. She pretended to be a yes man, but in fact, she was a ruthless person. If she could be so ruthless to herself, she would be even more ruthless to others. Ning Shu sat on the execution platform with a maid fanning him. Ning Shu picked grapes and ate them one by one. He used his spiritual power to scan the crowd and the situation in the houses around the execution platform. This time, he had to lose some of Fenjiuxuan's strength and try to catch them all in one fell swoop. Fenjiuxuan was definitely going to die. There were also people who wanted to break out of prison mixed in the crowd. There were also people who wanted to break out of prison in the houses around the execution platform. There were nearly 100 people. Moreover, they were all assassins. They were all assassins who had been soaked in medicine and their skin was stiff. He did not know how many of these assassins Fenjiuxuan had trained, but these assassins were very lethal to ordinary guards. When the time came, he would have to deal with them personally. These hidden dangers had to be dealt with. Otherwise, when the client returned, he would have to face assassinations every day. Fenjiuxuan did not want to achieve great things. He wanted to see his great things fall apart and become hopeless in the end. Ning Shu ate the grapes without spitting out the skin. He did not order Fenjiuxuan to be dismembered. Everyone watched under the sun. As time went by, the atmosphere became more and more stagnant. Your Majesty, it's noon. Do you want to carry out the execution? Ning Shu, an official of the Ministry of Justice, asked. Everyone was burning under the sun. Ning Shu did not bat an eyelid. Wait a little longer. There was a saying about the execution at noon. The sun was hanging in the middle of the sky at 1:45, and the shadow on the ground was the shortest. In the eyes of the people at that time, this was the time of the day when the yang qi was the strongest. Killing people was a yin qi. No matter whether the person who was killed deserved it or not, his ghost would always come to haunt the judge, the official in charge of the execution, the executioner, and the people related to his execution. Therefore, when the yang qi was the strongest, the execution could prevent the ghost from appearing. Also, the person who was killed could not even be a ghost. The soul of a person who had just died was very weak. Under the roasting of the yang qi, it might vanish into thin air. Ning Shu scanned the crowd with his spiritual power, took out a wooden sign and threw it on the ground. Carry out the execution. As soon as Ning Shu's voice fell, someone rushed to the execution platform and tried to take Fenjiuxuan away. 3 layers of guards stopped these assassins. The face of the official of the Ministry of Justice changed greatly and shouted for protection. Ning Shu kicked her away. Did he want to lead the assassins here? Sometimes, Ning Shu even suspected that these officials couldn't wait for her to die. She wanted to live well. Chapter 2143. Seeing all of you gnashing your teeth in anger, but there is nothing you can do. If you have the ability, then resign. Ning Shu pulled out the sword at his waist. This sword could cut through hair and was incomparably sharp. It was prepared for this day. Ning Shu ordered some guards to disperse the crowd, then he jumped into the battle. This time, the assassin was not here to kill the monarch, but to save his master. His attack was very simple, directly cutting the neck of the guard. Blood gushed out from the cut neck. Ning Shu used compressed sharp spiritual energy to attach to the sword. Everywhere the sword went, there would be broken limbs and broken bones. Ning Shu hooked the tip of his foot and directly lifted Fenjiuxuan, who was tied to the board, into the air. Then he raised his hand. With one hand supporting the board and the other holding the sword, he killed the copper-skinned and iron-boned assassin, filling the air with blood. Fenjiuxuan, who was lifted up, did not know what to feel. Ni Bingyan's strength was really great. Holding him up, he was still able to fight with the others so happily. Fenjiuxuan, who was tied up, could not move his body. He could only hear the sound of swords clashing, as well as the sound of the blade cutting through his flesh and blood splattering. Fenjiuxuan closed his eyes. His heart was numb. He did not regret what he did. What was done, and there was no way to redeem it. However, his power should be wiped out. He spent a lot of effort to train these death warriors, but in front of Ni Bingyan, they were like tofu. All of his efforts were like a joke. Ni Baiwei, who was being escorted, had something stuffed in her mouth. When she saw that someone had come to save Fenjiuxuan, she was very happy. As long as Fenjiuxuan was alive, everything was fine. However, her big sister was like a murderous demon. She would cut a person in half with a sword, or cut off their head, sending it flying far away. Her hair was flying, and she was incomparably cold, causing people to be terrified. How could there be such a person in the world? She was completely a demon, a demon. Ni Baiwei was so frightened that she had the urge to pee in her bladder. If Fenjiuxuan wanted to cut her into 1,000 pieces, how would he treat her? She had no idea what kind of methods he would use to deal with her. How could such an evil person sit on the throne? How could such a cruel person become the ruler of a country? How could a good person be tortured? The heavens were unfair. Ni Baiwei could only hope that these assassins could hold on and rescue Fenjiuxuan from her first imperial sister. Big sister was too terrifying. She had clearly used Fenjiuxuan to lure these people out and then slaughtered them all. Such a bloodthirsty person was too terrifying. The assassins couldn't hold on any longer. In the end, they blew a whistle. The assassins who were hiding in the room decided to retreat. They couldn't be saved now, so they decided to come back later. Moreover, the dismemberment process would take 3 days, which meant that they had 3 days to plan, and the sooner the better. Otherwise, the person they rescued might be a dead person. Piece by piece, the flesh was sliced off from the body. No one could endure such pain. However, when these assassins wanted to retreat, they were surrounded by layers of guards outside. It was difficult for them to charge out. Ning Shu put down the wooden plank. Fenjiuxuan, who was tied to the plank, trembled. He opened his eyes and saw a face. It was blocking the sun, so he couldn't see her face clearly. However, the expression in her eyes was particularly dazzling. Awake? Ning Shu patted Fenjiuxuan's face. Did you sleep well? Your Majesty, you killed my Feng clan's people. You killed the men I spent so much effort to train into death warriors. Do you think I can sleep? Why can't you sleep? Ning Shu asked back. Fenjiuxuan, crazy. Ning Shu expressed that he liked to see Fenjiuxuan's twisted face. Ning Shu let the guards clean up the battlefield. There were broken limbs and intestines everywhere. The scene was like Azura hell. Ning Shu felt more and more that he couldn't let Fenjiuxuan go. Perhaps this was only a small part of Fenjiuxuan's power. Who knew how much power Fenjiuxuan had? Ning Shu sat on a chair and used a handkerchief to wipe his hands. The official from the Ministry of Justice was a bit nervous. Ning Shu said to her, compile a list of the guards who died today. Give their families compensation. Triple the compensation. I understand. The official from the Ministry of Justice immediately said. She looked at Ning Shu as if she was looking at a demon god. The surrounding commoners had long disappeared. Some guards on the execution ground were lifting some corpses onto the boards of a cart and covering them with linen. Some of the guards' corpses were covered with white cloth. Ning Shu closed his eyes and recited the Rebirth Sutra in his heart. With the passage of reincarnation, their souls wouldn't be burned away by the Yang Qi. Other than the guards' souls, the souls of the death warriors also entered a black hole. After reciting the Rebirth Sutra, Ning Shu picked up the grapes on the table and ate them. The official from the Ministry of Justice was stunned. My God, Your Majesty, you just killed people. Your hands are covered in blood. Can you eat? You want to eat? Ning Shu looked up at the official from the Ministry of Justice. I don't want to eat. Continue the execution. There's no need to rush to cut the flesh. Take it slow. The more cuts, the better. The thinner the flesh, the better. Ning Shu said to the executioner. Yes. Ni Baiwei's legs went soft. When she saw the executioner holding the knife and was about to cut Fen Jiuxuan's body, she didn't know where the strength came from. She broke free from the guard's hands and stumbled to Ning Shu. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed, begging Ning Shu to let Fen Jiuxuan go. Ning Shu said, didn't you like Feng Yu's face back then? If he didn't have his peerless appearance now, I would believe that you two are truly in love. You two would also be together. Choose between disfigurement or death by 1,000 cuts. Ning Shu said to Ni Baiwei, this should be a very easy choice. Seeing that you are my sister, I gave you a choice. Ni Baiwei looked at Ning Shu, dumbfounded. You are really vicious. Fortunately, you two are also doing vicious things and still flaunt justice. Ning Shu said casually. If you don't choose, then there is only death by 1,000 cuts. Execution. Ning Shu said with a snort. Wait a minute, I. Ni Baiwei stumbled to Fen Jiuxuan's side and squatted beside Fen Jiuxuan. With a voice that was hoarse from crying, she asked Fen Jiuxuan, what do you think I should do? What should I do? Fen Jiuxuan turned his head and saw Ning Shu sitting there calmly. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say a word. Execution. Death by 1,000 cuts. Ning Shu picked a grape and said. Wait a minute. Ni Baiwei cried out. She was at a loss out of fear and her face was distorted. Moreover, she looked at Fen Jiuxuan with a forced expression and said, living is more important than anything. Don't die. Fen Jiuxuan was speechless. So she chose to disfigurement. Fen Jiuxuan asked with a hoarse voice, you made the decision for me. Sometimes, he really felt that this woman was troublesome. She was a real woman. Chapter 2144. Perhaps after he succeeded, it would be good to have such a woman by his side and dote on her. It was an exquisite porcelain with a bouquet of flowers inserted on it. It was like a brocade embroidered with flowers. The flowers were like brocade, adding to the brocade. However, if he provoked her too early, she would be like a fragile porcelain that couldn't withstand any collision. One wrong step would lead to many wrong steps. He shouldn't have been soft-hearted. His actions would probably make him a clown in Ni Bingyan's eyes. They would both look at each other as idiots. Ning Shu said, you can choose. The sun is so strong that it has tanned my skin. Ni Bingyan, you are so vicious. You will suffer retribution. Ni Baiwei gritted her teeth and said, the Li state will be destroyed in the hands of a tyrant like you. Ning Shu said indifferently, I don't know if I will suffer retribution, but you will suffer retribution now. The guards dragged Ni Baiwei away. The executioner was going to tear apart Fen Jiuxuan's clothes. The first knife was going to cut his chest, and the second knife was going to cut his biceps. Wait. Ni Baiwei shouted in panic. Her voice cracked. She said to Ning Shu, I choose. I choose to be disfigured. Fen Jiuxuan, who was on the chopping board, was numb. Since when did his fate let two women decide whether he would be disfigured or killed by 1,000 cuts? Ning Shu smiled. Then I'll disfigure you. Ni Baiwei hurriedly negotiated with Ning Shu. You disfigured Fen Jiuxuan, so you can't harm Fen Jiuxuan's life. Also, let us go. Ning Shu tilted his head. I only asked you to choose between being killed by 1,000 cuts or being disfigured. When did I say I would let you go? Also, it wasn't me who disfigured his face. It was your choice. Don't put all the blame on me. What do you think, Manager Song? Ning Shu asked the official from the Ministry of Justice. The official from the Ministry of Justice nodded. His Majesty is already very merciful. Originally, he was going to be executed by 1,000 cuts. Now, he's just carving the word sin on both sides of his face. When the official from the Ministry of Justice said that Ning Shu was merciful, his teeth ached. You. Ni Baiwei's expression was sluggish as she felt chills all over her body. She couldn't help but tremble. So cruel, so cruel. Why must you be so ruthless? I know I was wrong, but this has nothing to do with Fenjiuxuan. I do have feelings for him, but he doesn't know that I do. If you want to scrape me, then scrape me. Ni Baiwei kneeled on the ground. You think that I wouldn't dare to do anything to you, right? Although I don't know why you're pleading for your mother's murderer and even think that he's right to plunder our Ni family, Ning Shu said curiously. Destroy it for me. I am fulfilling seventh sister's wish. Ning Shu said indifferently. A normal person's brain was filled with many things, but Ni Baiwei's brain was probably filled with love, and love. She guessed that they were probably in deep love now. The separation of life and death moved the heavens and the earth. The executioner held a sharp knife and slashed Fenjiuxuan's face as he widened his eyes in fear. The sharp pain caused Fenjiuxuan's face to twitch. Ah! Fenjiuxuan couldn't help but cry out, but his mouth was immediately gagged. The wound was so deep that the bones could be seen. The executioner used a handkerchief to wipe off the blood as he cut the flesh. The feeling of the knife cutting the flesh was excruciating. Fenjiuxuan's eyes turned red as if they were about to burst. Ni Baiwei was dragged away by the guards as she looked helplessly at Fenjiuxuan. Her lips trembled as she said, "Don't blame me, I'm doing this to save your life." Feng Yuxuan was in so much pain that his tied-up body twitched. He vaguely heard Ni Baiwei's words and was so angry that he almost fainted. Did he really think that if he really ruined his face, the person sitting on the dragon throne would let him go? She was so naive. Even if she died of 1,000 cuts, her face wouldn't be destroyed because her head would be displayed in public. Now that her face was destroyed, she might not be able to survive. Fenjiuxuan's heart was filled with sorrow. His fate was actually being controlled by two women. He was fed up with being ruled by women. He couldn't bear to see weak women ruling over men. Fenjiuxuan, who had a foundation in martial arts, had a very sturdy body. Even though he was in so much pain, he didn't faint and suffered so many cuts. Moreover, every cut was so deep that the bones could be seen. Sometimes, Fenjiuxuan felt that the knife had cut into his face. It was so painful. Take him back and watch over him. Get him some medicine, he can't die. Ning Shu watched as Fenjiuxuan was carried back to the prison. Ni Baiwei watched as the imperial physician treated Fenjiuxuan's wounds. Ni Baiwei was carried away by the guards. Her legs were already weak as she looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of hatred. Are you happy now? Why wouldn't I be happy? You should be happy too. After all, you were the one who said that I would be disfigured. Ning Shu said. You're so vicious and ruthless. No one will like you, no one will love you. Do you think that you'll be happy by torturing Fenjiuxuan like this? You're just a person who can't get what you love. The more you act like this, the further away the person you love will be from you. Ni Baiwei roared at Ning Shu. Ning Shu picked his ears. Don't use that argument. You're vicious, no one loves you, no one loves you. You're such a failure as a person. You're a loser because no one loves you. Are you trying to say that although I'm the emperor, it's lonely at the top? I'm a pitiful worm. However, this pitiful worm can make you all become pitiful worms that are more pitiful than me. Ning Shu patted Ni Baiwei's pale face. Look, you're so pitiful now. I hope you still love Fenjiuxuan, who doesn't have a peerless appearance. Ning Shu smiled. How can a love that's based on appearance be faithful? Don't make yourself sound so noble. You. Ni Baiwei kept using the word vicious to describe Ning Shu. However, the other party didn't care about it at all. It was as if she couldn't attack his weakness. Was the reason why she could treat Fenjiuxuan like that because she didn't love Fenjiuxuan at all? Big sister, why did you do this? If you don't love Fenjiuxuan, why did you marry him? Don't you have any responsibility for the situation that has developed to this stage? Ning Shu blinked his eyes and asked, what responsibility? Is it because I didn't fulfill your great love and conveniently gave the Ni clan's empire to someone else? Or is it because I didn't know what's good for me to die and fulfill your love so that you can use the empire as a betrothal gift to make Fenjiuxuan the emperor? Do you have to be so sharp? You clearly know that's not what I meant. You haven't treated Fenjiuxuan well from the start. Ni Baiwei's heart trembled. Furthermore, it's normal for dynasties to change. If the Ni clan can't manage this country anymore and someone else manages it, everything will disappear one day. Ni Baiwei said. Chapter 2145. Ning Shu agreed with Ni Baiwei's words and nodded, but Fenjiuxuan has been defeated, so why are you telling me this? Ning Shu leaned close to Ni Baiwei's ear, evildoer, don't say such things while using Little Chi's body. This body grew up eating the Ni family's food and occupying Little Chi's body. If you say such heart-wrenching words, won't Little Chi come to take your life? When Ni Baiwei heard Ning Shu's words, she only felt her ears rumbling. Her ears were filled with Ning Shu's words, evildoer, occupying Little Chi's body. Her biggest secret was exposed. Ni Baiwei felt like a clam that was peeled open, revealing the soft meat inside. She was shocked and angry. She always felt that no one had discovered her abnormality. Sometimes, she dared to be willful in front of her eldest imperial sister because she felt that the other party wouldn't easily kill her. She always called her Little Chi, which made her feel that this older sister doted on her. But now that the other party called her evildoer, she knew that she wasn't the original Ni Baiwei. Ni Baiwei was scared out of her wits. She felt that her ears had gone deaf. She could only stare blankly at the other party's moving lips, but she couldn't hear what the other party was saying. Ni Baiwei felt that her last straw was gone. She had nothing left. Ning Shu was finally satisfied when he saw that Ni Baiwei was no longer acting like a descendant of the Ni family. Originally, he didn't want to expose her. She even acted as if she cared about the world and met a tyrant like her. Didn't she just want someone to release Fenjiuxuan? She even wanted to use righteousness to pressure her. Ning Shu said, keep her and Fenjiuxuan together. It's not easy for a pair of ill-fated mandarin ducks. Ni Baiwei was dragged into Fenjiuxuan's cell by the guards. The cell was filled with the smell of blood. Ni Baiwei looked at the unrecognizable Fenjiuxuan who had already fainted and cried loudly. She didn't understand why things turned out this way. She didn't want to hurt anyone. She didn't want to transmigrate here. She didn't want to. Transmigration wasn't her choice. If it was possible, she still wanted to be in the modern world. Ni Baiwei hesitated for a moment. She didn't have anything to miss in the modern world. The money she earned every month wasn't enough to spend. Here, she was a princess with a noble status. She wore luxurious clothes and had a group of servants. She was someone with a high status in society. However, she couldn't understand why she was exposed. 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 She was exposed by the ruler of a country. Would she be burned as an evildoer? This kind of person was crazy. They would hide in a corner and observe everything. They couldn't bear to see others doing well. Ni Baiwei looked at the unconscious Fenjiuxuan. She was exposed. What would happen to her and Fenjiuxuan in the future? Why was she imprisoned here? Ning Shu went to the other side to interrogate the captured assassin. This assassin's legs were crippled by Ning Shu. In the end, before he could interrogate him, he bit his tongue. He bit it so hard that half of his tongue fell to the ground. Fenjiuxuan's ability to nurture people couldn't be underestimated. Everyone was afraid of death. This death soldier decisively ended his life. He had already lost all his humanity. Since he killed himself, there was no other way. She could only continue to torture Fenjiuxuan. Every once in a while, he would do it once in a while. Let's see who would be able to withstand it. She was prepared to get more lethal weapons. For example, a crossbow. A crossbow that could shoot multiple times. Even if she couldn't clean up Fenjiuxuan's forces, she had to make sure that these people who were hiding in the dark wouldn't dare to show their faces. She didn't mind taking care of Fenjiuxuan. However, Fenjiuxuan's martial arts would definitely be crippled. Ning Shu focused on handling the affairs of the imperial court. The Ministry of Justice rushed out a new code of law through the ordinary officials. Ning Shu spent time reading a table full of books. Compared to the previous course code of law, it was much clearer now. This was also to reduce the burden of the Ministry of Justice's officials. These officials could check the code of law when judging cases and know the severity of the sentence. Ning Shu sent the code of law to various yamens for the county magistrate to study. If it was an unjust case, there wouldn't even be a chance to seek redress. Ning Shu stipulated that a case must be tried twice. In particular, some major cases must be reported to the imperial court immediately. The county magistrate couldn't handle it alone. The imperial court would send someone to handle it. Moreover, these major cases wouldn't affect the county magistrate's assessment. However, they would educate the people about the content of the code of law. A parent official had the power to control the life and death of tens of thousands of people. If he wanted you to disappear, you would disappear. It was a small matter if he wanted your family to be destroyed. They also believed that under the 3 trees, what can't you ask for? The 3 trees were instruments of torture on the neck, hands, and feet of the criminal. Under heavy punishment, any kind of words could be said. This way, it would become an unjust case. Some parent officials were afraid that these things would affect their assessment and their official career, so they ended it hastily. Ning Shu later promulgated some reforms. He gave the officials a raise and also gave the officials who were revising the code of law a holiday. The officials were in a sour mood. They didn't know what to say. In the end, they knelt and thanked Ning Shu for his grace. Who knew which corrupt official's family would be raided for the raise? They were tired of this kind of emperor who didn't follow the rules. Especially since there were piles of broken limbs and corpses a while ago, the emperor's reputation as a benevolent and virtuous person had been completely destroyed. However, the common people had mixed feelings about the emperor. They feared and loved him at the same time. His methods were swift and decisive. Obviously, he was a coward of the crown princess. How did he become like this? When the late emperor passed the throne to the crown princess, some officials thought that she was a soft ball. With the crown princess's character, she must be in the hands of the officials. She took the ball and stretched out her body. It was full of thorns. Ning Shu didn't care about what these officials thought. As long as she did the work, it was enough. Sometimes she felt that she still needed to be a gentle boss. She gently asked the officials if their work was hard. As a result, the officials knelt on the ground and said that it was not hard at all. Ning Shu also gave up the idea of being a good boss. She was suitable to put on airs like this. She wanted to be gentle, but the officials were so scared that they trembled. Was she so terrible? The spiritual qi in Ning Shu's dantian began to slowly turn from gas to liquid. Even if the client came back, he still had a strong fighting capacity. Although these officials said that he was cruel, they still succumbed to his fighting capacity. The emperor was a master. This was more deterring. When the spiritual qi condensed into liquid, more spiritual qi could be condensed in the dantian. With enough spiritual qi, it was also possible to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. Ning Shu wrote down the cultivation method of the peerless martial arts. This might become a treasure of the Li state. If the descendants of the Ni family also cultivated it, it could increase her power of faith. After all, she was a member of the royal family. She couldn't have too much power of faith. Chapter 2146. Ning Shu would take the time to visit Fenjiuxuan and listen to the jailer report to her about Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan. The two of them were locked in the same cell and Ning Shu allowed them to spend time together. The scars on Fenjiuxuan's face were very hideous. Although the conditions of their cell were good, the air wasn't good. Fenjiuxuan's face was infected and Ning Shu asked the imperial physician to save Fenjiuxuan's life. As for the face, it was very normal to have scars. Even divine pills and miraculous medicines wouldn't be able to cure so many scars. Ning Shu stood at the door of the cell and looked at Fenjiuxuan and Ni Baiwei. Ni Baiwei shouted to Ning Shu, "Eldest imperial sister, can you let me out? I beg of you." Ning Shu looked at Fenjiuxuan who was lying on the bed and said to Ni Baiwei, "Why do you want to go out? In the past, there was no way for the two of you to meet and it was always through messenger pigeons. Now that we allow the two of you to spend time together, you should be grateful to us." Ni Baiwei was speechless. This person was simply a psychopath. Ni Baiwei really couldn't face Fenjiuxuan. The two of them were speechless and didn't know what to say. Ni Baiwei felt that Fenjiuxuan wouldn't forgive her and Fenjiuxuan definitely felt that it was because of her that his face was disfigured. Only the heavens knew that she did all this to save Fenjiuxuan. Ni Baiwei fell into the mode of, "I love the person who doesn't understand me, my heart hurts, and my heart feels wronged." Furthermore, Fenjiuxuan didn't pay attention to her. This kind of oppressive atmosphere only wanted Ni Baiwei to escape. Even if Ni Baiwei repeatedly apologized to Fenjiuxuan, Fenjiuxuan said that he didn't blame her. However, he didn't blame her and didn't pay attention to her. Furthermore, Fenjiuxuan's face was infected and it was a little scary. The imperial physician wrapped his face like a mummy and when the cloth was removed, his face was full of scars. The left and right sides were twisted like earthworms and there was the word "sin" on each side. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it and would only feel that the scars on his face were particularly terrifying. Ni Baiwei couldn't imagine that this was the peerlessly handsome Feng Yuxuan. The areas without scars were delicate and fair, but the areas with scars were exceptionally ferocious. With such a comparison, Ni Baiwei's heart was beating wildly. She didn't know how to face Feng Yuxuan. She also didn't dare to reveal an expression of fear. At this time, Fenjiuxuan's heart must be very fragile and sensitive. She couldn't say that it was ugly to provoke Fenjiuxuan. Even if Ni Baiwei repeatedly assured him that in her heart, Feng Yuxuan would always be the dazzling man who stood in the pavilion and played the flute with his slender body. However, Ni Baiwei was a little afraid to look at Fenjiuxuan's face. Fenjiuxuan didn't feel anything when there was an extra person in the cell. As for Ni Baiwei's careful words of comfort, Fenjiuxuan didn't take them to heart. He was indifferent to Ni Baiwei's thoughts and only used his obsidian-like eyes to look at Ning Shu outside the cell. "Are you here to see the masterpiece on Yuxuan's face?" Ning Shu stroked his hair and tilted his head to look at the scars on Fenjiuxuan's face. He shook his head and said, "It's a bit regretful. It's not very perfect. Ni Baiwei looked at Ning Shu as if she was looking at a pervert. You are simply a pervert. Ning Shu didn't deny it and simply shrugged his shoulders. He simply ignored her and had the Imperial Guards escort Ni Baiwei back to the palace. Ni Baiwei's eyes lit up when she heard that she could return to the palace. She appeared to be pleasantly surprised. However, when she thought of Fenjiaxuan, she didn't dare to show it too obviously. Ni Baiwei said to Fenjiaxuan, "Don't worry, I will definitely save you." Fenjiaxuan glanced at Ni Baiwei. She didn't dare to look at Fenjiaxuan's eyes and lowered her eyes to look at the ground. Fenjiaxuan spat out an unknown "ha" from his throat. He couldn't tell what it meant. Ni Baiwei was escorted back to the palace. Ning Shu had people escort Fenjiaxuan to the Meridian Gate to be executed. He wanted to lure out more rats hiding in the dark corners. Fenjiaxuan was escorted out of the prison cell. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "Your Majesty, can you come closer? Yushuan has always wanted to say something to you." "I won't." He didn't come closer. "I don't want to hear anything from you." Fenjiaxuan smiled. The scars on his face were incomparably ferocious. "You are still so cold-hearted. Damn, you speak as if you don't have a heart of stone. When a crow says that a pig is black, I don't think so." This time, he wanted to skin Fenjiaxuan alive. Moreover, he really cut off a piece of flesh from Fenjiaxuan's body. Fenjiaxuan was in so much pain that his face contorted. This was done to intimidate those with ulterior motives. Secondly, it was to attract the people from the Feng clan and Fenjiaxuan's remaining forces. However, this time, it really attracted a wave of death warriors. These death warriors were very terrifying existences with copper skin and iron bones. They wouldn't give up until they reached their goal. They were like cockroaches and were a disaster to ordinary Imperial Guards. As soon as the men of sacrifice appeared, Ning Shu took the lead and rushed to the front to kill these men of sacrifice. It seemed that only her compressed spiritual chi could cut through these copper skin and iron bones. The other guards were more or less sent to their deaths. As long as a death warrior appeared, Ning Shu wouldn't let them go. Otherwise, the imperial palace would be a no-man's land to these people in the future. Moreover, Ning Shu found that she couldn't decisively end Fenjiaxuan. Fenjiaxuan was now a chess piece to tie down these death warriors. If Fenjiaxuan died, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't viciously slaughter the common people or the Ni clan. This kind of thing couldn't happen again. He was no different from a terrorist. There was no mercy, no morality, and no pity in his heart. He was born to kill. He didn't mind raising Fenjiaxuan. After killing until her body was covered in blood, Ning Shu ordered the Imperial Guards to move the corpses out and bury them. She didn't know how many death warriors there were or how many of them there were in the Feng clan. She couldn't take in these death warriors for her own use. Ning Shu sent out secret guards to investigate the Feng clan and Fenjiaxuan's headquarters. Ning Shu didn't plan to ask Fenjiaxuan. During the morning assembly, the court officials told Ning Shu to stop killing people. The common people didn't understand. Now, the name of the tyrant was spreading like wildfire. Ning Shu asked in return. Why did the common people have to understand? Did she need to explain her matter to every common person? The common people thought about how to survive. As for her matter, it was only a matter to be discussed after the meal or to scare the crybaby. What was there to explain? What was there to understand? There was no need for them to understand. Everything was for the stability of the country. Even if they didn't understand, they would still do it. The court officials were speechless. You're the boss. You have the final say. Feng Yushuan had been cut a few times, and the imperial physician was almost going to live in a prison cell. His Majesty had said that this person could not die, and that he had to be fed well. Did the imperial physician think that it was good food to fatten her up so that she could cut her flesh? Ni Baiwei, who was in the palace, was stunned when she heard that Ning Shu dragged Fen Jiuquan out to cut his flesh. How perverted was this? Chapter 2147. Even if she toyed with him and tortured him time and time again, she was just an old witch who couldn't get what she loved. Ni Baiwei wanted to rush in front of Ning Shu, but her moon immortal palace was surrounded by 3 layers of guards. She couldn't get out. Otherwise, Ni Baiwei would go out and ask, "You're so perverted. What do you want from torturing Fen Jiuquan? Do you think you can find redemption in your heart?" However, Ni Baiwei swallowed these words and felt very uncomfortable. This woman was the most perverted woman Ni Baiwei had ever met. She was even more perverted than her female superior. At most, her superior would send back the projects she worked hard on, but this woman wanted to take someone's life. She did whatever she wanted without any scruples. Did she not have any respect for this woman? Ning Shu wrote down the last part of the cultivation method for the peerless martial art. Although the peerless martial art was simple, it became more profound as one cultivated it. Spirit energy turned from gas to liquid and then to solid. Once the solid was shattered, specks of light would appear in the Dantian like a vast universe. If the peerless martial art was mystical, then it would be better to say that the human body was mystical. Perhaps a single cell was a universe. Of course, this was only possible if one had enough spirit energy. After writing down the secret manual, Ning Shu placed the secret manual in a box and locked it up. Then, he placed the key in a safe place. In the past, when she found the peerless martial art, it was already moldy at the bottom of the box. At that time, she was poor and had nothing. Just having a peerless martial art was enough to make her happy. The peerless martial art had accompanied her until now. Now, the peerless martial art was about to form a world. Ning Shu kissed the key. This kind of feeling was a bit like entrusting one's child. It was the feeling of entrusting one's peerless martial art to the person who entrusted it. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the bed and cultivated. When it was time for the 3rd night watch, he had to get up and tidy up. It was time for the morning assembly. It wasn't easy to be an emperor, but it was better than being killed. Moreover, the feeling of being cheered 3 times was great. Standing at a high place and looking down, this was his country. Fen Jiuquan, who had his flesh cut off, almost couldn't hold on. It was Fen Jiuquan's will to live. Ning Shu went to the prison to see him and injected some spiritual energy into his body. With spiritual energy, Fen Jiuquan wouldn't die so easily. She was provided with good food and drink, and it was according to the standards of the empress. Every day, the food was sent out from the imperial kitchen. He slept on a high bed with soft pillows. He could do whatever he wanted, but he couldn't leave the cell. Fen Jiuquan, why did she use the empress' boudoir to entertain a prisoner like him? Was it because he had once been her legitimate husband? But if that was the case, how could she say that she could ruin his face and kill him by 1,000 cuts? What exactly was she thinking in her heart? Fen Jiuquan felt that this one was a lunatic. She wasn't as simple as Ni Bingyan, who could see through her emotions with a single glance. However, Ni Bingyan was a lunatic. You couldn't understand what she was thinking at all. There was no logic to speculate. Lunatic. Falling into the hands of a lunatic, Fen Jiuquan really wanted to sigh. Your Majesty, what exactly do you want Yuxuan to do? Can you just say it directly? Fen Jiuquan sat on the bed and looked at Ning Shu, who was outside the cell. You don't need to do anything. Just take care of yourself. Don't think about seeking death all day long. How easy is it to die? It's better to live. Ning Shu said with a smile. Your Majesty, you want to know how much power Yuxuan has, right? Fen Jiuquan smiled faintly, but his face was really a little sinister. Ning Shu looked at his face indifferently. Fen Jiuquan restrained the smile on his face. He didn't like the way this person looked at him. When he was peerless in his generation, his face could turn the world upside down. The way she looked at him was indifferent. There was no shock, no infatuation, no feelings. Now that his face that could turn the world upside down was no longer there, and he even had an ugly face, she was still so indifferent. She didn't have any feelings. Fenjiuxuan felt that he didn't enter the other party's eyes at all. Regardless of whether he was beautiful or ugly, the other party didn't care. This kind of feeling made Fenjiuxuan feel a little uncomfortable. He thought that the other party cared a little. Perhaps the things he did were a little to vent her anger, or at least she would be angry. However, she didn't. Just like how he didn't love Ni Bingyan in the past, she also didn't love him now. This was a discovery that made him vomit blood. He was insignificant in the other party's heart. He didn't have any weight at all. Ning Shu saw that Fenjiuxuan suddenly became dispirited. He didn't know why he was dispirited. As long as he didn't die, it was fine. He would let the prison guard take a good look at Fenjiuxuan. He couldn't let Fenjiuxuan die. Ning Shu sat in front of the desk and read through the memorials. He heard 2333's voice in his mind. Mission completed. Do you want to leave the mission world? Ning Shu put down the cinnabar pen and told the maid that he wanted to take a nap and not let anyone disturb him. The maid helped Ning Shu to sleep. When she left, she closed the door. Ning Shu closed his eyes. Leave the mission world. Ni Baiwei and Fenjiuxuan no longer had any power to resist. As for how to deal with it, it was up to the person who entrusted it. Ning Shu felt dizzy and returned to the system space. He took out the agarwood and placed it in the incense burner. When he lit it, the fragrance lingered in the air, making him feel better. Ning Shu crossed his legs and took out a black rose. He placed it on the tip of his nose and sniffed it. A warm feeling flowed into his heart, creating a warm and happy mood. Ning Shu really wanted to ask His Excellency for the seeds of this flower. He wanted to plant this flower. Since this flower had such an effect, he might even be able to earn some money from it. However, she didn't have the contact information of His Excellency. Even if she managed to contact him, she didn't have the qualifications to ask for anything. His Excellency would probably roll his eyes at her. No, he probably wouldn't even pay attention to her. Ning Shu sniffed the black rose and opened the video to see the situation of the person who entrusted it. Ning Shu had his own selfish motives for destroying Fenjiuxuan's appearance. After all, beautiful things weren't poisonous. Ning Shu was a little afraid that Ni Bingyan would be mesmerized by Fenjiuxuan's beauty. After all, even men could be mesmerized by a man's beauty and hand over the country to him. For example, in history, Emperor Ai of Han. The word homosexual originated from him. There was also Ni Baiwei. Although her body was taken over by a transmigrator, this body was still the sister of the person who entrusted it. As for how to deal with it, it was still up to the person who entrusted it. This mission really made Ning Shu mentally exhausted. However, Ning Shu learned a principle. It was impossible to reason with people. You have your principles, and she has her own way of thinking. No one could change the other's mind. In the future, if he encountered such unreasonable things, he would be too lazy to argue. He would just do what he needed to do. It was a waste of saliva. Chapter 2148. Ning Shu found that Ni Bingyan's methods were very fierce. She directly said that Moon Immortal Palace's Ni Baiwei had died of illness. She also directly chopped off Fenjiuxuan's head and hung it on the city wall. This caused a group of men of sacrifice to counterattack violently, almost without any regard for their lives. Ni Bingyan had long been prepared. She had been waiting for this time. Her killing would make people tremble in fear. Ning Shu watched the video and felt that Ni Bingyan might have really suppressed her anger. She directly used the fiercest method to deal with these two people. It must feel good to kill your enemies with your own hands. Some injuries could not be forgiven. The courtiers were really trembling with fear. Ni Bingyan sat on the dragon chair. She did not say anything, but she had a strong deterrent force. Ni Bingyan vigorously implemented some measures that were beneficial to the people's livelihood. It was probably because she was really cruel. There were very few objections from the courtiers. The people did not care what kind of person the emperor was. As long as they had enough to eat and warm clothes, they could live their lives. Although the emperor's reputation was not good, some of the measures did make the people's lives much better. The world was also a lot clearer. At least, there were no more unjust cases. The courtiers felt more satisfied. Although there would be a salary increase, they always felt that the emperor wanted to find someone to punish. The salary increase was just an excuse. However, with the salary increase, there was indeed less corruption. Some people who could not resist the temptation were executed. As long as there was conclusive evidence, there were no excuses. They were directly executed. Ni Bingyan had a strong interest in the unique martial arts left by Ning Shu. It was probably because she could not practice martial arts, so she cherished it very much. Ni Bingyan could be so swift and decisive. It was the strength that gave her courage. It was the strength that gave her endless confidence. If Ni Bingyan was a softball, she would only be pushed around by the courtiers if she wanted to implement any measures. Now, it was no longer the case. Who knew if His Majesty would go crazy? Her life was very important. Although it was difficult to face Her Majesty, the high salary could slightly make up for the shock in her heart. Ning Shu turned off the video and clenched his fists. Come on, when you have power and influence, what can stop you from doing what you want to do? She also wanted to become stronger and take control of her own destiny. After watching the video, Ning Shu wanted to know how much pure soul power had been purified by the soul stone sent to the main system this time. 23333, is the soul power of the soul stone back? Ning Shu asked excitedly. It's back. It was given out together with the mission's soul power. 2333's voice was filled with joy. Although I only have 10%, no matter how small a mosquito's leg is, it's still meat. Not bad. Ning Shu was suddenly filled with anticipation. His soul would definitely grow bigger and bigger. When the time came, it would be invulnerable and tough. Ning Shu opened the attribute panel. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker. Points card, 211, 10 million points per card. Soul value, 14 HP, 13 Wisdom, 15 Luck, 16 Charm, 10 Spirit, 13 Martial Strength, 16 Aptitude, 16 Faith, 2700980 Merit, 845211 Soul Strength, 71 Authorization Ticket, None Pure Heart, None Comprehended Law, Water Law Incarnation, Constructed World, suspected to be the world of reincarnation tools, Calm Aura, Calming Pill, Faith Aura, Amulet 4, Upgraded Amulet plus 2 honorary titles, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Skills, 5th Ring Shooting Technique, Level Close Combat Technique, Minor Achievement in Peerless Martial Arts, Level Poison Technique, Low-Level Business Management Knowledge, Beginner Code Programming, Beginner Lawyer Skill, Divine Master Ghost Catching Skill, Beginner Cooking Skill, Level Embroidery Skill, Trash Hypnosis Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Sister Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura, Grassa's Blessing, Best Friend for Life, Miao Miao Miao's Blessing, Healer of the Dying, Zhu Sunyang's Blessing, Founding Woman, Chen Ermiai's Blessing, Beauty of the Law, Chen Ning's Blessing, Bane of the Blood Clan, Jasmine's Blessing, Communication Between Races, by San Yang's Blessing, Heart of the Brave, Wang Ying's Blessing. Completed the wish of the entrusted Ni Bingyan, reclaim the Li state. Mission completion rate, 100%. Mission reward, 12 points, 10 attribute points, 70% of soul power, 6,000 faith, including previous world's accumulation, the title Bloodthirsty Tyrant, an additional 40% of soul power. Ning Shu, what the hell is Bloodthirsty Tyrant? She might as well not have this title. Is she really a tyrant? Is it really good for Ni Bingyan to give her such a blessing? Thank you. The additional 40% of soul power should be the soul power purified by the soul stone. 2333 took a layer, she had 30%. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27 level, Super Mission Taker Points card, 211 plus 12, 10 million points for 1 point card. Soul, 14 plus 2 health, 13 plus 1 wisdom, 15 plus 1 luck, 16 plus 2 charm, 10 plus 1 spiritual power, 13 plus 1 martial strength, 16 plus 1 aptitude, 16 plus 1 faith, 270, 0980 plus 6000 merit, 845211 soul strength, 71 authorization ticket, none pure heart, none law comprehended, water law. Water law incarnation, constructed world, suspected to be the world of reincarnation items, calm halo, tranquil pill, faith halo, amulet 4, upgraded amulet plus 2 honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th ring shooting technique. Level close combat technique, minor achievement in peerless martial arts, level poison technique, low-level business management knowledge, beginner code programming, beginner lawyer skill, divine master ghost catching skill, beginner cooking skill, level embroidery skill, trash hypnosis halo, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Chen Shi's blessing, leader halo, grass blessing, lifelong friend, Miao Miao Miao's blessing, life-saving hand, Zhu Sun Yang's blessing, founding woman, Chen Ermiai's blessing, lawful lady, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, transcending race communication, by San Yang's blessing, brave heart, Wang Ying's blessing, bloodthirsty tyrant, Ni Bingyan's blessing. Ning Shu began to absorb the soul power. To her surprise, not only was there soul power, there was also a trace of golden soul origin that merged with her soul. Soul origin, there was actually soul origin. No wonder 2333 was surprised. Ning Shu had used a lot of soul origin before, and the soul origin that she lacked before was now replenished. She was so surprised and excited. Moreover, the soul power from the quest and the pure soul power from the soul stone was quite a lot. After Ning Shu finished absorbing the soul power, she opened her eyes and looked at her soul. It seemed to have become stronger. The most important thing was that she had soul origin. If her soul origin was stronger, her soul would become more resilient. That's great. When the time comes, I still have to go to 9 Palace Mountain to collect soul stones. If my soul condition allows, I will enter the second level. /BK. Chapter 2149. Ning Shu stretched his back and felt really satisfied. He didn't expect that such a difficult mission would actually give him a 9 Palace Mountain. The other party was a cheater. Who knew what he went through to deal with him? Moreover, he threw it into the reincarnation tunnel. He didn't know how the Senfu was doing now. Although it was a little unkind to throw things into the reincarnation world, there was nothing he could do. He didn't know whether or not she would start a massacre in the reincarnation world. However, there were also evil souls in the reincarnation world. It probably wouldn't be her turn to start a massacre. Ning Shu used a jade bottle to fill up the spirit liquid in the pond. There was a koi-like fish swimming in the pond. When it saw Ning Shu filling up the spirit liquid, it actually jumped up and used its tail to slap Ning Shu's hand. Then, with a splash, it jumped into the spirit liquid. Ning Shu frowned. What was the meaning of this? Not giving it to him? That was true. If there was no more spiritual liquid, these fish wouldn't be able to live. But he had to use the spiritual liquid to exchange for soul stones. Not only did soul stones have soul power, but if one was lucky, they might even have soul source. A person's soul source was limited and it couldn't be increased. Also, the person who entrusted it would only contribute soul power and not soul source. With soul source, one would have a chance to start anew. The organization also didn't want the soul source of the person who entrusted it. So, there was no extra soul source. This is a spiritual fish. It feeds on spiritual energy. There is no spiritual energy in the system space, so this spiritual liquid is its food. The spiritual energy that it consumes will eventually turn into spiritual liquid and complement each other. 2333 said. What should he do? That meant that the fish ate spiritual energy and excreted spiritual liquid. This was good stuff. This was easy to solve. Ning Shu opened the exchange system store. There were spirit stones in the system store, but the price was a little low. After all, it was 4 times the price. Ning Shu wanted to use spirit stones to exchange for soul stones, but the spiritual liquid was purer and more competitive. It was more precious than spirit stones. Ning Shu looked at the fish swimming in the spiritual liquid and spent nearly 50,000 faith power to exchange for a lot of spirit stones. Then, he poured all of it into the spiritual liquid. However, it was only enough to fill a corner of the spiritual liquid pool. Ning Shu felt his liver ache. He could not afford inflation. If it were in the past, he would have been able to buy 4 times as many spirit stones. But now, he could only buy so little. After feeding these things to the spirit fish, they eventually turned into spirit liquid. When Ning Shu was storing the spirit liquid, he felt a little weird. What she was storing now should be the excrement of the spirit fish. Who cares? In any case, it was a pure spirit liquid. The lotus flower that had been fluttering in the wind had also begun to wither. It had begun to grow lotus seeds. Who knows what use the lotus seeds that grew from the spirit liquid would have? Ning Shu reckoned that it was a good item. He didn't know how many soul stones it could be exchanged for. Right now, all he could think about was soul stones, soul stones, soul stones. The tea table was filled to the brim with jade bottles, and the floor was covered with them. Ning Shu kept the items, and with a point of her finger, a black hole appeared in front of her. Ning Shu walked into the black hole and disappeared from the system space. 2333 used his mental power to fill the remaining jade bottles with spirit liquid. The more soul stones Ning Shu exchanged, the more soul power he would obtain. The system space was filled with jade bottles. Ning Shu stood in front of the 9-palace mountain. He stretched out his hand and touched the 9-palace mountain. A suction force sucked Ning Shu in. Ning Shu found a place to set up a stall and even made a signboard. Then, Ning Shu waited for business to come. There were also people who had exchanged for spirit liquid from Ning Shu. When they saw Ning Shu setting up a stall again, they immediately came to exchange for it. Ning Shu could be considered a repeat customer. Later on, people continued to exchange for it. However, not even half of it was exchanged. What was going on? Was the spirit liquid not popular? Ning Shu was a little surprised. He started to pack up. If he couldn't exchange for it here, he would change to another place. At this moment, a servant walked over and said proudly to Ning Shu, "Miss, our young master invites you." Ning Shu didn't know any young masters here. He guessed that they were local tyrants. It was very likely that they were here for the spirit liquid in her hands. Ning Shu didn't care who she did business with. As long as the price was fair, it was good to exchange in large quantities. It would be troublesome to exchange for it one by one. Since there was business, Ning Shu naturally had to make a trip. He said to the servant, "Please lead the way." The servant brought Ning Shu to a house. This house was quite big. Most importantly, it was rich in spirit qi. It was probably supported by a formation. There were ancient cultivators here. They had all kinds of methods. The servant brought Ning Shu to wander around the secluded courtyard. Ning Shu paid attention to the formation in the courtyard. Don't look around. If you trigger any formation, you won't even know how you died. The servant Ning Shu warned. After a lot of twists and turns, they finally arrived at the hall. There was a distant sound of music in the hall. There were also dancers swinging their sleeves and doing a graceful and seductive dance. Sitting on top was a young master in luxurious clothes. There were two maids on his left and right. One was feeding him wine, the other was feeding him fruits and vegetables. At a glance, there was a pool of wine and a forest of meat. It was a very extravagant scene. Wait here. The servant walked in and whispered in the young master's ear. The young master let the dancing maids go down and said lazily, "The people standing outside, come in." Ning Shu walked in. The young master pushed away the maid in his arms and asked, "You need soul stones?" Ning Shu nodded, "I am a soul body. I need soul stones to cultivate. I can exchange spirit liquid for soul stones. Let this young master see if the spirit liquid is pure or not." The young master said lazily. His voice had a thick nasal sound. He even pinched the maid's plump breasts. The maid didn't care at all. She covered her mouth and laughed. Ning Shu took out a rank 1 spirit liquid from her cloth bag and gave it to the servant. The servant then gave the spirit liquid to the young master. Ning Shu felt that the strength of this servant wasn't weak. According to the cultivation level, this servant should have the strength of Jindan. If a servant had this kind of strength, then what kind of strength would this young master who seemed to be addicted to wine and women be? The young master took the jade bottle and smelled it. He felt it and said, "The spirit liquid is very pure, but the bottle is too inferior." Ning Shu was speechless. It was enough to be able to lock the spirit chi of the spirit liquid. How good was the bottle? Although the bottle wasn't very good, it was still made of jade. How do you want to exchange? The young master put the bottle of spirit liquid on the table and teased the maid beside him. It was as if he didn't care about this business at all. Ning Shu said, 1 bottle of spirit liquid for 5 high-grade soul stones. If it's a slightly inferior soul, 10 for 1 bottle of spirit liquid. Such a small bottle of spirit liquid isn't worth 5 high-grade soul stones. Ning Shu only said, "Such a bottle of spirit liquid is worth 10 high-grade soul stones. My price is very fair." "Oh, then where did you get this spirit liquid from?" the young master asked. Ning Shu was silent. As expected, he didn't come with good intentions. Chapter 2150. Ning Shu almost rolled her eyes. How did this thing come about? Of course, it was found. Could it be that it grew legs and ran to her? Ning Shu casually said, "This thing was given to me by my elders. The elders in my family told me to come out and gain experience." Pretending to be a rookie with a background who came out to gain experience. That young master frowned, stood up and walked in front of Ning Shu. He sized up Ning Shu, "If that's the case, why didn't the elders in your family give you soul stones and spirit liquid? I don't know what the elders in my family are thinking." Ning Shu was a little disgusted with the way this man looked at her. In the cultivation world, it was common to keep furnaces in captivity, but she was in her soul state, yet he still looked at her with such eyes. The weak would rely on the strong, and some weak female cultivators would find a backer. This was something that couldn't be helped. The young master sized up Ning Shu, then said to the servant beside him, "Bring out the soul stones." The young master sat back down and teased the servant girl. He casually said to Ning Shu, "This young master wants all the spirit liquid you have." "That's good." Ning Shu took out a lot of spirit liquid bottles, which made the young master's mouth twitch. He was lucky that he had a family background. Otherwise, it would be a slap in the face. No matter what this young master's purpose was, as long as the item was traded, if he had bad intentions, it was very likely that he would go for wool and come home shorn. The servant and Ning Shu calculated the exchange of spirit liquid and soul stones. This was a big deal, and there was also a ring space. All the soul stones were in the ring space. Ning Shu handed the items to the servant, then took the ring space and cupped his hands. The deal is done, then I'll leave first. Wait a minute. The young master called out to Ning Shu, doing business is a matter of reciprocity. How about this, tell this young master your name. Next time you have business, you can come to me. Ning Shu said, all of my spirit liquids have been exchanged, so I won't be exchanging any more for a while. The young master's expression was indifferent. He asked the servant to send Ning Shu out. When Ning Shu left the room, the young master let go of the servant girl's plump hand and drank a cup of wine. A country bumpkin who doesn't even have a ring space dares to drag out his family's elders. The young master clicked his tongue. In any case, he had already placed a restriction on her body. No matter where she was, he would be able to sense her. Furthermore, his consciousness was also in the ring space. She could imagine what it would be like if she couldn't open the ring space. It wasn't that easy to take his things. If he really had an elder protecting him, how could he have become a soul body? Although a soul body could also cultivate, it was not as good as a physical body. She didn't even think of a script when she lied. Sent away. The young master asked the manservant who had just returned. The manservant immediately smiled and said respectfully, I've already sent her to the door. She looks very happy. Ning Shu walked on the streets, casually tossing the ring space around. He wanted to catch a big fish from her. He was dreaming. It would be a waste if he didn't do a big business. He didn't have to set up a stall outside in the rain and wind. This young master was only willing to exchange for more benefits. Then come and find me. If you find me, I'll call you daddy. Ning Shu walked to a secluded corner. With a tap of his finger, a black hole appeared in front of him. Ning Shu walked into the black hole. The black hole disappeared. Ning Shu disappeared from the Nine-Palace Mountain. Standing on the black ground, Ning Shu brushed off the imprint on his body. You want to use this thing to track me? Dream on. Ning Shu directly used his immense spiritual power and consciousness to invade the ring space. He directly destroyed the consciousness hidden in the ring space. The consciousness let out a scream. This ring space was completely ownerless. Ning Shu scanned the many spirit stones in the ring space. He was elated. He had more spirit energy to take. He was too happy. How good would it be if he had his own spirit stone mine? Ning Shu was happy to get the spirit stones. The young master in the Nine-Palace Mountain frowned when he realized that he couldn't sense his imprint. It disappeared. Could it be that the woman discovered his imprint? But with her strength, it shouldn't be. The young master felt that the woman didn't have any aura. If she wasn't in spirit form, she was more or less an ordinary person. However, there was a droplet of water between her eyebrows. She looked quite beautiful, like a stream flowing on a mountain. It was a pity that she was in spirit form. Otherwise, he could use her as his cauldron. Could it be that there was an elder behind her? Ah! A sharp pain suddenly attacked him. It was as if his spirit was being torn apart. The young master spat out a mouthful of blood. The servant and servant beside him were shocked. The young master endured the pain. His sea of consciousness was turned upside down. The consciousness in his ring was destroyed. It even implicated him and hurt his spirit. Young master. The servant hurriedly shouted with a worried face. What happened? He was fine, but he almost went berserk. The young master wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. I was actually scammed. He looked like a rookie, but he didn't expect him to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't let him meet that woman again. Otherwise, her spirit would be destroyed and she wouldn't even be able to become a spirit stone. Scram! The young master shouted at the servant angrily. He directly flipped the table in front of him. The servant was so frightened that her face turned pale. She scrambled and crawled away. Investigate that woman for me, the young master said to the servant. The servant immediately went to do it. The young master had already noticed the person exchanging spirit liquid for spirit stones. He didn't expect that the woman would run away after taking the item. The imprint disappeared and even the space in the ring became hers. Ning Shu expressed that it wasn't good for everyone to do business peacefully. If you felt that it was fair, then do it. If you felt that it was unfair, then don't cooperate. But you just had to play dirty. If I wasn't as strong as you, then I could only blame myself for being unlucky. But if I was bullied by you even though I was strong, then that was unacceptable. The cultivation world was cruel. The weak were prey to the strong. The strong were respected. If I wasn't strong enough today, I would have died in the Nine Palace Mountain. Ning Shu returned to the system space with the ring and released the spirit stones from the ring. 2333 very actively sent these things through a special energy channel to the main system to be purified. Ning Shu moved her neck. It was so difficult to do business. The next time she changed to another place, the first level would be bigger. The strong dragon couldn't suppress the local snake. Looking at the young master's appearance, she knew that he had a strong family background. If she beat up the young, then the old would definitely come. It was like poking a hornet's nest. This was not in line with her low-key junior high method of exchanging spirit stones. But if these people really came looking for trouble, she didn't mind showing her power and making an example out of them. Then she would announce that she wanted to exchange for spirit stones. She would be full of sincerity and show enough strength. Maybe she could even exchange with the big families. So, whether that young master came looking for trouble or not, Ning Shu wasn't afraid. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.